The condo was nice, newly built. Just over 2,000 square feet, a three-bedroom plus study, spacious, but not ridiculously so. They had toured a few of those sprawling luxury flats, but Lucas had found them cavernous and sterile, completely lacking a sense of home. "We could put the projector screen here," Lucas said, pointing to the living room wall. The distance to the sofa was perfect. He could already imagine cuddling with Lily on movie nights. He noticed she hadn't responded. Turning, he saw her attention had been stolen by the panoramic, floor-to-ceiling window. She was standing before it, completely captivated. "You really have a thing for these windows, don't you?" Lucas said softly, walking to her side. They were on the 20th floor, the view sweeping and unobstructed. Watching the snowflakes drift down from this height was a truly special kind of beautiful. Lily nodded gently. "You can see the sound from here, just like at the hotel." This building was designed specifically for its waterfront views. The real estate agent, who had been hovering silently, chimed in. Seeing their mild reaction, she quickly shifted her pitch. "There's also a highly rated preschool just a few hundred feet from the complex. It would be very convenient for when you have little ones." She warmed to her subject. "You two could walk your child to school together every morning, hand in hand. It would hardly take any time at all, but for a child, having both mom and dad there for drop-off, that would make them feel like the luckiest kid in the world." A spark of interest lit in Lucas's eyes, but when he saw the glowing look on Lily's face, he froze. Damn it, she got me. He had already started picturing it. Him and Lily walking their kid to preschool. The thought was so powerful, so disarmingly complete, that he worried if he let it linger, he'd end up making an offer on the spot. This agent knew exactly what she was doing. A little while later, they left the building. The snow showed no signs of letting up, so Lucas held the glossy floor plan over Lily's head like a makeshift umbrella. She didn't seem to notice, her head bowed as she ticked things off on her fingers. This place must be incredibly expensive, she thought. Even if she was now making a few thousand a month from her art, it would take her 10, maybe 20 years of saving every penny. But the money Lucas had in his account, he could probably buy 2 of these. The more she thought about it, the more she realized her husband was on a completely different level. Lucas had no idea what his dork of a girlfriend was calculating, nor could he guess the source of the awestruck look in her eyes. But even though Lily never said a word about wanting to buy it, her reaction was all he needed. He mentally moved this condo to the top of his list. Her happiness was priceless. You live the life you can afford. If you weren't making money, they'd get married in that old rental apartment just the same. Lily truly didn't care about material things. She was happy with him, period. But now that he could provide, he was determined to give her the best of everything. The condo they'd just seen was less than a mile from Jason's house. Remembering that Vanessa's due date was fast approaching, they decided to stop by for a visit. A festive New Year's wreath already hung on the villa's front door. The holly bushes beside it were a deep, lush green, clearly well-tended. As Lucas reached out to knock, he noticed a new gadget by the door. Leaning closer, he saw a screen scanning his face. Leave it to Jason to blow his money on facial recognition, Lucas thought with an inward chuckle. He nudged Lily with his chin. Fancy, huh? Maybe we should get a big house like this for our first place. They'd already agreed he'd borrow the money for the house from his mom and pay her back over time. Better to get it settled sooner rather than later. Having the wedding hanging over their heads was an unresolved stressor. Lily pursed her lips, thinking for a moment. You're already too lazy to walk to the dining table for breakfast. In a house this big, you'd have to go downstairs. She much preferred the condo they'd just seen. It had that huge window with a view of the Sound day and night. Such an open vista would lift anyone's spirits. And while it was big, it was definitely cheaper than a house. And it has absolutely nothing to do with wanting to walk our baby to preschool, each of us holding one of their hands. Absolutely not. Lucas paused. Suddenly, the idea of a huge house didn't seem so appealing. This dork would probably refuse to hire a cleaning service, and they'd spend all their time just trying to keep the place tidy. Before he could find the doorbell, the door clicked open. That advanced. Did it actually recognize me? I opened it with my phone, Jason said, looking at him like he was an idiot. He waved them in. Come on, get in here. Hearing Lily's voice, Vanessa didn't want to stay in bed. She called out from the bedroom for Jason to help her up. Just as Jason was about to go, Lucas stopped him. Let my wife go. Don't make Vanessa get up. As Lily closed the door behind her, Lucas glanced out the window at the still falling snow, then turned back to his friend. Any day now, right? He asked quietly. It was obvious Jason had been through the ringer lately. His dark circles were so pronounced he looked like a raccoon. 2 weeks, max, Jason said with a nod. In a couple of days, I'm just going to take her to the hospital to stay. No point in saving a few bucks and risking a frantic last-minute rush. He didn't know if he was explaining it to Lucas or to himself. Then he changed the subject. You two have your license. When's the wedding? The more Jason thought about it, the stranger it seemed. He and Vanessa had gotten married right after getting their license. He had no idea what these two were waiting for. Soon, Lucas said seriously. We were just looking at places. Definitely in the next few months. Once everything was ready, he wanted to do it right away. If it weren't for the marriage certificate tucked away somewhere, there were times he and Lily almost forgot they were already married. Then one of them would remember, and they'd break into a goofy grin. Well, you've waited this long, don't rush it too much. Wait a couple more months, and the baby will be a little older. I'll be free to help you plan. If Vanessa's still recovering, she won't even be able to make it to the ceremony. We have to get the house set up first. By then, your kid will probably be crawling, Lucas said, showing Jason the floor plan, which was now soaked through. We just saw a place at the Bayside Towers. It's nice, and there's a preschool right next door. Oh, that's perfect. We could be neighbors. Maybe our kids can even go to preschool together. Jason's voice trailed off as a sudden suspicion dawned on him. Wait a minute. Is this all part of some elaborate scheme? Meanwhile, in the bedroom, Lily was startled when she saw Vanessa's large, round belly. This is what full term looks like, Vanessa said, patting her stomach with a smile. This one's patient. Probably going to wait until the exact due date. Is it really hard? Lily's hand hovered in the air. Only after Vanessa nodded did she gently place it on the swell of her belly. She felt a slight movement and snatched her hand back as if she'd been zapped, which made Vanessa laugh. It's incredibly hard, Vanessa said, the floodgates suddenly opening. She launched into a litany of complaints. She couldn't eat. It was hard to walk. She hadn't been out in ages. But when she finished, she was still smiling, the sharpness in her eyes replaced by deep warmth. But it's also the most wonderful thing. Thank God I didn't go through with the abortion. Lily nodded, not quite understanding, but feeling a pang of envy. Around noon, they left Jason's house. The snow had stopped, leaving the world draped in a blanket of white. I swear, it feels like just yesterday Jason and I were pulling all-nighters playing League of Legends. Lucas mused, his breath turning to mist in the cold air. And now he's about to be a dad. He laughed. Maybe we should. He stopped mid-sentence, swallowing the rest of the thought. This was a decision Lily had to be part of. If he brought it up first, he knew she'd agree without a second thought, just for his sake. Lily looked at him, her eyes wide. Say it. Just finish the sentence. I'll even help you come up with an excuse to convince me. The more she thought, the more flustered she became. Cheeks puffing out, she stomped ahead of him. Lucas watched her go, a thoughtful expression on his face. Lily, She turned back, her gaze as soft as water. Let's go take our wedding photos tomorrow. On a beach. Huh. A moment ago, Lily's mind had been filled with thoughts of their future child, wondering what they would be like. Lucas's sudden suggestion left her completely stunned. Go where? She asked, tilting her head, her expression blank. Lucas almost choked. She looked like a cartoon penguin with a giant question mark over its head. He had no idea how she managed to look so aloof and yet so adorably clueless at the same time. Fearing a signature headbutt, he suppressed his smile and answered seriously. Hawaii. It's warm there, even in January. Won't that be really expensive? It's fine. We still have your wedding fund, right? Lucas stepped forward and took her cold hand. Whenever I think about our wedding, I just want everything to be perfect. Lily nodded softly. That made sense. Besides, the payment for her last commission had just come through. She could afford to splurge a little. Okay, let's go, she whispered, her head bowed. The truth was, she was incredibly excited. She didn't know how many girls dreamed of wearing a wedding dress, but she certainly did. And to be Lucas's bride, to wear it for him. So you finally admit you were saving up a wedding fund, Lucas said, raising an eyebrow. Lily said nothing. Lucas Carter did not, in fact, manage to dodge his daily headbutt. They say technology changes lives. In the old days, a trip to Hawaii from the mainland could take weeks. Now the flight from Seattle was just a few hours. Lucas's momentum was unstoppable. They went home, ate, and immediately started packing. By that evening, they had arrived. It was January 10th. Seattle was buried in snow, with temperatures hovering just below freezing. Here in Hawaii, the sun was still shining brightly in a 77-degree paradise. As soon as they got to the hotel, Lily peeled off her heavy coat and changed into the white sundress she'd packed. In the span of a few hours, it felt like they had changed seasons. They looked at each other, both now dressed for summer, and shared a moment of dazed wonder. I'm so tired, Lily murmured, opening her arms and flopping onto Lucas, who was already sprawled out on the bed. Lucas winced. He wrapped his arms around her, inhaling the sweet, familiar scent of her hair. It was a good thing she was so light, otherwise that flying leap might have done some real damage. After holding her for a moment, he nodded toward the room's floor-to-ceiling window. Go look at the ocean. He knew how much she loved those windows, so he'd specifically booked a hotel with an oceanfront view. Her interest was immediately piqued. She padded over to the window and froze, mesmerized. After a long moment, she breathed. It's so big. Your English teacher would be devastated to hear that, Lucas teased, walking over to join her. He glanced outside. The golden sand and the deep blue water stretched to the horizon. As waves rolled onto the shore, he could almost hear the rhythmic crash. It was dusk. The sky was darkening, and the setting sun cast a final, shimmering gold trail across the water. But what really intrigued Lucas was the window itself. You could see everything from inside, but from the beach, the glass was a perfect mirror. This is a great spot, he said appreciatively. Lily poked him and handed him a napkin. For your drool, she said meekly. So, should we just stay in tonight? Why? Lucas glanced at the reflective window, a wicked grin spreading across his face. A second later, he yelped. Ow! What did you bite me for? He cried, shaking his hand. She had struck without warning. He hadn't even seen it coming. You're a pervert, she said, pouting and glaring at him. She still hadn't realized that her attempts at being threatening were utterly adorable. Seeing the faint teeth marks on his hand, she was suddenly afraid she'd actually hurt him. She quickly blew on the spot, then planted a soft kiss on it. I didn't even say what I was thinking. How am I a pervert? Lucas protested, tapping the glass. All I meant was we can see the ocean just fine from here, and we're tired, so we should just rest. What did you think I meant? I don't believe you. You don't even trust your own husband. Lily huffed again, ignoring the question. She linked her arm through his, her eyes still fixed on the endless expanse of the sea. As of today, your dream list is officially complete, Lucas said, his tone turning serious. Lily paused, a faint blush creeping up her soft cheeks, mirroring the sunset. We already have our license, and you're still so good to me. What are you talking about? This is my life's work. You think I was just going to stop once I tricked you into being my wife? After the long flight and car ride, neither of them felt like going out. They even had dinner at the hotel. When Lily heard there was a free buffet, she shot up from the bed and dragged him downstairs. After eating, they returned to their unlit room and collapsed onto the bed, lying there like two beached whales. If it was true that couples started to resemble each other over time, Lily felt her current state was irrefutable proof. Part of it was post-finals exhaustion, but she couldn't deny that Lucas was rubbing off on her. One half of her mind was scolding herself for being lazy, while the other half just wanted to melt into him and stay like this a little longer. Is this what they call conscious spiraling? Just then, Lucas pushed his phone in front of her. Take a look and see if you like any of these. Then we can go pick one out in person. Lily stared at the screen, which was filled with a dazzling array of wedding dresses. I thought you wanted a traditional-style wedding, she asked, confused. We will. The ceremony will be traditional, and you will wear a custom embroidered gown. But we'll take our wedding photos in a classic wedding dress. That way, we get the best of both worlds. No regrets. He said it with such a straight face, with such matter-of-fact logic, that for a second, Lily almost believed this was how it was always done. She was still dreamily scrolling when Lucas's WhatsApp chimed. Without looking, she handed the phone back to him. Emily Carter, you two should come over for dinner tonight. We never discussed a family contribution. Lucas Carter, we're in Hawaii. Can't. Emily Carter, why on earth did you suddenly run off to Hawaii? Lucas Carter, taking wedding photos. Your daughter-in-law had never seen the ocean, so I brought her to see it. Emily Carter, when did you leave? Lucas Carter, this afternoon. Emily Carter, LOL Emily Carter. Well, you can discuss it with her yourself then. Lucas put his phone down and yawned, then dutifully relayed the message. So, how much of a wedding gift should my family give you? You gave me your $10,000 wedding fund, so I'll just give you $10,000 back. He had a feeling Lily would appreciate him being so official about it, even though they both knew it was just a formality. Who negotiates wedding gifts after getting the marriage license? But this dork of his, for all her softness toward him, had a stubborn streak of pride. Otherwise, she never would have quietly saved up that much money in the first place. The girl blinked, then asked tentatively, what if we don't do a gift? I was never planning on asking for one. Nope, you already gave me your wedding fund. But you need the money right now. Those two mobile games are still bringing in cash. We can afford it. Lily puffed her cheeks, thought for a moment, then suddenly shifted, sitting upright on his lap in a perfect W sit. Do you have that card I gave you? she asked softly. Lucas nodded and pulled the bank card, the one containing Lily's wedding fund, from his pocket. He'd kept it safe, guarding it more carefully than the card that had held hundreds of thousands of dollars. Lily took the card and twirled it between her fingers, a radiant smile on her face. I'll just pretend this is the gift you gave me. Lucas stared at her. Are you trying to create an infinite money glitch? Meanwhile, at a steakhouse back in Seattle. To us, for passing the bar. Ryan Brooks raised his glass of juice, clinking it gently against Sophie's. A wide, irrepressible smile spread across his face. This past year, he had managed to stay focused, and it had finally paid off. He noticed Sophie glance at her watch. Your mom's probably blowing up your phone, he said. I could take you home. It was after 9, definitely getting late. Normally, once the clock struck 7, Sophie's mother would begin a relentless campaign of calls and texts. She hasn't, the short-haired girl said, slowly shaking her head. Oh, Sophie looked away shyly. She didn't call today, she mumbled. So, I don't have to go back just yet. Ryan froze. His heart skipped a beat. He swallowed hard. I'm not misreading this, am I? Is this it? Is it finally happening? He was so nervous he could barely think. His brain completely short-circuiting. He reached for his phone for a lifeline. Ryan Brooks. Guys, how do you ask a girl to stay the night without sounding crude or sleazy? Jason Miller. My wife is sitting right next to me. Are you actively trying to get me killed? Ryan Brooks. I'm serious, man. Help me out. I'll name my firstborn after you. Jason Miller. Fine. Ask her if she wants to go see the view of the sound from your place. If she agrees to stay out past 10, you can just ask if she wants to come up for a bit. Jason Miller. We're all adults. She'll know what you mean. Jason Miller. Also, and this is important, check the damn thing for holes before you use it. Ryan Brooks at Lucas Carter. You got any advice? Jason Miller. You really want to ask him? His girlfriend probably just threw herself at him. Putting his phone away, Ryan took a deep breath to steady his nerves. After a moment of mental preparation, he asked, Do you want to come over and see the view from my place? As soon as the words were out, his face flushed. In his nervousness, he'd messed up the line. To his surprise, Sophie hesitated for only a second before giving a small, almost imperceptible nod. Ryan's apartment was a simple studio, the kind rented by countless young professionals starting out. It wasn't large. From the doorway, you could see the bed, the desk, the doors to the kitchen and bathroom, and the balcony at the far end. It was a one-man operation, but the space was immaculate. You can sit down. I'll get you some water. Okay. As Ryan disappeared into the kitchen, Sophie finally allowed herself a few deep, shaky breaths, her hands clenched into tight fists. She felt like a teenager sneaking around behind her parents' backs, her heart hammering so hard she thought it would leap out of her throat. Just as she started to calm down, her phone buzzed, making her jump. A wave of dread washed over her as she tremblingly pulled her phone from her purse. Mom, still not home? Sophie, I wanted to stay out a little later tonight. Is that okay? Mom, are you still out celebrating with your boyfriend? Sophie, yes. We're still at a restaurant. Mom, okay. Sophie felt a rush of relief. She couldn't believe her mom was being so reasonable. She had been fully prepared for a verbal assault followed by an order to come home immediately. It was the first time in her life she had ever lied to her. Just as she was starting to relax, her phone buzzed again. Mom, by the way, remember we were talking about family contributions for the wedding? Tell him our family expects $50,000. Sophie frowned, confused as to why her mother would bring this up now. She tapped out a reply, Mom. Isn't $50,000 a little much? The response was as swift and unyielding as always. Am I the one making the rules, or are you? Here you go. Ryan placed a glass of water on the table and sat down beside her, his nerves palpable. After a moment's hesitation, he casually tried to get a little closer, sliding an arm around her shoulders and pulling her into an embrace. Our parents have met. What am I so afraid of? He'd already bought protection on the way up, using the excuse of grabbing drinks. He'd never really studied the things, but he trusted his masculine instincts. Sophie rested her head on his shoulder. After a long debate with herself, she finally spoke. My mom said she's expecting a $50,000 wedding contribution from your family. The smile that had just begun to form on Ryan's face froze solid. How much? He repeated, almost automatically. Sophie's voice trembled. $50,000. Ryan was silent for a moment. Is this your idea, or your mother's? My mom decided. But this is our wedding. We don't have to listen to her, do we? Can you talk to her about it? Maybe she'd consider less. She won't listen, Ryan. Can't you just figure something out? Please. Tears welled in her eyes, her voice pleading. Ryan let out a frustrated sigh. You can't just do everything she says. I, I can't help it. Can we just do what she wants? Because my family can't scrape together $50,000 even if we sold everything we own. Ryan finally yelled, his eyes wide with desperation. He'd spent 2 years studying for the bar, not earning a dime. His father was already working overtime driving a taxi just to keep the family afloat. Their one hope was for him to land a stable job, not to get rich, but just to have a steady income. He'd been freeloading for 2 years. The thought of asking them for more money was worse than death. $50,000. He'd only been out of school for a year. How could he possibly save that much, even in several years? Where was he supposed to get it? Rob a bank. Realizing he'd raised his voice, his anger deflated. I'm not yelling at you, he said softly. Sophie didn't answer, her eyes red. The room fell silent. Seeing that she wasn't making a move to leave, Ryan felt a flicker of confusion. After a moment, he stood up, sniffled, and said, It's getting late. I'll take you home. Right now, if you combine my money and Lucas's, we still wouldn't have that much. What the hell is her mother doing? Selling her daughter. Why doesn't she just rob a bank? As expected, Jason's furious shouts erupted from the other end of the line. Ryan stood on his balcony, gazing into the night, listening silently. So you returned her in pristine condition. Jason grumbled. Are you an idiot? Ryan gave a bitter laugh. I don't know what I was thinking. I love her so much. What a stupid reason. Her mom asked for that much. She's obviously not planning on letting you two use it for your future. The nerve. Both your families only have one kid. Is her daughter plated in gold? Is she worth 5 Vanessas? Ouch, damn it. Stop hitting me. I'm talking business here. Jason continued his rant, and Ryan listened, letting the noise and his own chaotic thoughts dissolve into the night. Sophie changed her clothes, waiting until the redness in her eyes had faded before she mustered the courage to enter the living room. The middle-aged woman with permed hair was sitting on the sofa, one leg crossed over the other, her expression cold as she stared at the television. Mom, can we please not ask for such a large wedding contribution? She began, walking slowly toward her mother, her voice a tentative whisper. No. The woman's eyes remained fixed on the screen, her expression unchanged. The expected answer. Over the years, she had lost count of how many times she'd heard that word. If this situation weren't so critical, she wouldn't have even bothered to ask. Why not? Ryan is so good to me, and I love him. He can't even come up with $50,000. How is he supposed to give you a better life? Sophie was incredulous. Mom, that money is supposed to be for us anyway. Why do we need to ask for so much? Are you stupid? Of course I'm going to keep that money for you. If you two spend it, what happens when he leaves you? Sophie paused, then lowered her head. This is my decision. What did you say? I said. Her mother glanced at her, and all the fight seemed to drain out of her. Her voice shrank. I want to make my own decision about this. I raised you all by myself, and this is how you repay me? By talking back. Tears instantly welled in the woman's eyes. She began to sob. You're the only child I have. I didn't remarry because I was afraid a stepfather would mistreat you, and this is what I get. Your father left me when you were so young. Do you have any idea how hard it was for me to raise you alone? Sophie felt like her ears were bleeding. She'd heard this speech 1,000 times. Please stop crying, she said, her own eyes turning red. I'll listen to you. Late that night, the grandfather clock in the living room chimed twice. Sophie, who hadn't been able to sleep, opened her eyes and picked up her phone again. Their chat history was still open to Ryan's last message. Get some sleep. She hadn't texted him since, and he hadn't reached out to her. She thought for a long time, but she couldn't come up with anything to say. What was there left to say? The thought of leaving things in silence made her want to cry even more. With blurry eyes, she typed 4 words. I wish you happiness. Just as she was about to turn off her phone, she saw a familiar profile picture in her contact list, a bubble machine. She'd heard Ryan talk about Lily's family situation. She felt they were similar in some ways. On a whim, she sent a message. Sophie, can I ask you a question? Lily replied almost instantly. Of course. Sophie, if your mom asked Lucas for a $50,000 wedding contribution, but Lucas couldn't afford it, what would you do? Lily, I would probably beg my mom. Sophie, what if begging didn't work? She waited for a long, long time. Just when Sophie thought Lily wouldn't reply, a new message appeared. Lily, I would elope with him. Sophie stared at the message, her mind going blank. Then, she slowly curled into a ball, burying her face in her blanket and biting down hard, her body racked with silent, heartbreaking sobs. She didn't know why, but she didn't have an ounce of that kind of courage. She would never dare. Back in Hawaii. Wow, elope with me? So decisive. Lucas teased, munching on popcorn from his perch beside Lily on the bed. He hadn't bothered asking Ryan for the details. Even with their close friendship, some things you had to wait for your friend to bring up themselves. Prying would only make it worse. It'd be like seeing your desk mate fail a test, and, before they even said a word, patting them on the back and saying, "It's okay if you messed up this one time. You do better next time." Tactless. Lily, realizing Lucas had been reading over her shoulder, flushed beet red. She scooted away and pulled the covers over her head, pretending she hadn't heard a thing. "I feel so bad for her," she said a moment later, wriggling back over and resting her head on his chest with a soft sigh. Lucas thought for a long time. She'll only be truly pitiful if she keeps listening to her mother. He vaguely remembered Sophie's mom. Even after just a brief meeting, he'd found her need for control pathologically uncomfortable. If Sophie were just a little smarter, she'd realize how fragile the chains her mother had wrapped around her really were. What if my mom pulled the whole crying, screaming, threatening to jump off a bridge routine? Would you still be willing to run away with me? I'd still elope with you. Why? Eloping with you and taking care of my mom aren't mutually exclusive, she said, her clear, beautiful eyes blinking as she ticked off points on her fingers. I'd just be getting married against her wishes. It doesn't mean I'd abandon her. Those are two completely different things. And if my mom acted like that, it would only prove she wasn't really doing it for my own good. I guess you're right. For a second, Lucas couldn't tell if his dork's logic was brilliantly simple or if his own thinking had been warped by societal norms. "You know, you're surprisingly smart sometimes," he said seriously. "What's that supposed to mean?" Lily's cheeks puffed out in indignation. "I'm only dumb sometimes. Most of the time, I'm very smart." Okay, Lucas said, rolling onto his back and staring at the ceiling. Damn, 50 grand. Even if he offered to lend it to Ryan, accepting it would probably feel like a blow to his pride. If Sophie wasn't willing to fight for their relationship, it was a dead end. There's a saying that for a couple, going on vacation just means being attached at the hip in a different location. Lucas had never believed it. Their first day, they arrived at dusk, exhausted and in no mood to explore. They didn't even leave the hotel. The second day, they slept until noon. Waking up together in a hotel inevitably leads to distractions. By the time they were done, they were even more drained and spent the rest of the day curled up under the covers watching anime. It was only on the afternoon of the third day that Lily realized the hotel cost nearly $200 a night. Unable to bear it any longer, she dragged him outside. "We've been here for 2 days, and we've ordered takeout for 2 days," Lily exclaimed, holding up 2 fingers. She did a quick mental calculation and felt her soul leave her body. The night before, watching Lucas eat a delivery pizza in a fancy Hawaiian hotel room, she had been at a complete loss for words. The pizza place was a national chain. They could have gotten the exact same thing back in Seattle. "Relax. Think of it as recharging our batteries," Lucas said, unconcerned. For him, a vacation was about doing whatever felt right, not running around ticking off a checklist like it was a mission. Besides, he hadn't been completely idle. He'd spent the last 2 days coordinating with a wedding photographer. He planned to take all of Lily's solo shots himself, but they'd need a professional for the photos of them together. They walked out of the hotel to the greetings of the staff and soon found themselves on the beach. The waters of the Pacific Northwest were often a moody gray-green, but here, the ocean was a brilliant, vibrant blue, stretching to meet the sky in a seamless line. Lucas saw other tourists walking around shirtless and decided to join them, wearing just his swim trunks to soak up some sun. Lily, however, remained fully dressed. He didn't press her change. It was a classic guy paradox. You wanted to see every other woman in a bikini, but you wanted your own girlfriend wrapped in 3 layers of clothing. Lily wore a long white sundress. She took his hand, and they strolled along the shoreline, the sea breeze toying with her long hair. It was a picture of bohemian romance. Finding a secluded spot, they stopped, both silently gazing out at the water. "Come on in," Lucas called, wading into the surf and waving her over. The girl hesitated for a moment before lifting the hem of her skirt, revealing her pale, slender ankles and calves. She stepped gingerly into the cool water. "Ah!" she cried out at the strange sensation, scrambling closer to Lucas as if afraid a wave might sweep her away. They steadied themselves, holding onto each other as the waves rolled in, some small, some large, each one a surprise. Lily could feel the tide washing over her feet, pulling the sand out from under her. She felt like she could stand there and play in the water for hours. After a while, Lucas pointed a dramatic finger toward the horizon. "On the other side of that sea," he intoned grimly, "are our enemies." Lily stared at him, utterly bewildered by his strange outburst, and took a tentative step away. Lucas caught her "you're a complete weirdo" look inside. "You're an illustrator and you've never seen Attack on Titan?" Aaron recommended it, but I was too scared to watch. I'll make you watch it with me tonight. No way. You'll just try to scare me to death, and then when I can't sleep unless you hold me, you'll say, if you don't agree to my demands, I won't sleep with you. Lucas's jaw twitched. When had his reputation sunk this low? I wish I could paint this, she said. Lucas turned and saw her framing him with her fingers, adjusting the imaginary shot. We brought the DSLR camera. A tiny, barely perceptible smile touched Lily's lips. Painting it is different. Every time she drew him, she felt that with each stroke of the brush, she was etching his features, his eyes, his smile, and her heart. Lucas nodded, vaguely understanding. Their future kids would never lack for pictures, that was for sure. They'd have photos and paintings, too, of everything. He was lost in this fantasy when a splash of cold water hit him. He spun around to see Lily. The corners of her eyes crinkled in a triumphant grin. Lily Thompson, you're asking for it, he growled, preparing to retaliate. He looked fierce, but inside he was giddy. In just 2 short years, this shy, quiet girl had blossomed enough to tease him like this. Lily immediately backpedaled, holding up her hands in surrender. Wait, I'm not wearing a swimsuit. Hearing this, Lucas's smile turned positively wicked. Isn't that even better? Question mark. Only then did Lily remember exactly how long her husband's memory for grudges was. I'm sorry, she squealed as a wave of seawater drenched her. Seeing the huge wet patch on her dress, she turned and fled. Too late. On the endless stretch of coastline, a beautiful girl in a white dress could be seen sprinting for her life, clutching her hem. A furious-looking young man chased after her, as if she owed him a great deal of money. As evening fell, the oppressive heat of the day finally dissipated, leaving only a gentle warmth that was quickly cooled by the ocean breeze. After a full afternoon of horsing around, they were both tired. They walked hand in hand, leaving 2 parallel tracks of footprints in the sand. Just as they were about to head back to the hotel, Lily spotted something scuttling across the beach. A crab, she exclaimed, excitedly running over and scooping it up. It was tiny, less than an inch wide, and undeniably cute. But Lucas's attention wasn't on the crab. The girl before him stood in her white dress, the sea at her back, a soft smile playing on her lips. The wind lifted her long hair, but she paid it no mind, her gaze fixed lovingly on him. The setting sun painted the hem of her dress in a shimmering gold. Lucas was mesmerized. You live your life for a few perfect moments. Some sights were so beautiful that just to witness them felt like a life fulfilled. I'm so glad I taught this dork how to smile. In his reverie, he saw her wave at him. There are so many more. Come help me catch them. You catch them, Lucas said, staying put. Lily paused. Is it because they're small like bugs? It's not like a bug, but it is too small. Lily couldn't help but smile. So he was still afraid to touch it. Lucas looked around and noticed other people doing the same thing. Some even came prepared with plastic buckets. The girl caught another tiny hermit crab, the size of a fingernail. I'm going to catch a lot, she announced with determination. Childish, Lucas muttered. But a few minutes later, he returned from a nearby vendor with a small red bucket. As everyone knows, things sold in tourist traps are made of solid gold. The bucket cost $20 and came with a tiny plastic shovel. Put them in here, he said, placing the bucket beside her. Okay. At first, Lucas had no intention of joining in. But after watching Lily become so engrossed, he picked up the shovel and helped her catch a few. The crabs were small, but they were surprisingly fast. Without using your hands, you had to be quick and precise. By the time she'd had her fill, the sky was dotted with stars. The dork had sharp eyes. Lucas figured she'd caught at least half a bucket's worth. Lily took the tiny crabs out of the bucket one by one, gently placing them back on the sand. We'll go back after I've let them all go, she said softly. You spent all this time catching them just to let them go, Lucas asked, his eyes twitching in disbelief. Catching and releasing. Is she trying to earn karma points? Would you eat a crab this small? Lily looked down at the remaining crabs in the bucket. You could swallow one whole and not even get a mouthful of meat. And the tiny hermit crabs were even smaller. Out of their shells, they were no bigger than a watermelon seed. She wondered if you could make soup with them. Lucas eyed the crabs with disdain and shook his head. I wouldn't eat them. See? And we can't take them back with us anyway. Lily stood up, brushing the sand off her hands. She watched with satisfaction as the little crabs scurried away in every direction. We'll let them go today, so we can come back and catch them again tomorrow. Lucas was speechless. You guys better run far, far away. This person has way too much time on her hands. Be careful, or she'll catch you again tomorrow. After a few more days of playing in Hawaii and several long photo shoots, the end of the month arrived. The New Year's holiday was just around the corner. That afternoon, Lucas was playing the role of Lily's personal photographer when his phone rang. "My wife had the baby. It's a girl, 6 pounds exactly." Jason's cheerful voice came through the line, bursting with unconcealed joy. All his earlier hesitation and anxiety were gone. She didn't even cry when she was born. The doctor had to give her a little smack to get her started. Lucas blinked, a bit surprised. "Have you picked a name yet?" We have. We're calling her Claire." Jason was laughing like a fool. "You guys better wrap up your fun and get back here, or you'll miss the party." The name sounded gentle, yet strong. It had to have been Vanessa's choice. Jason didn't have that kind of taste. As they talked, Lucas found himself smiling, the joy infectious. "Do you and your wife want to be the godparents?" "Yes, absolutely." Lucas readily agreed, then added with a laugh, "Hey, old man, is it safe for my son to park his souped-up Civic outside your house?" "Gotta go, phone's dying." On the other end, Jason hung up, grumbling. He turned to look at the baby, a stern expression on his face that immediately melted back into a goofy grin. Vanessa was already recovering well. Seeing her husband's dopey look, she let out a cold snort. Jason took her hand. "You have to teach her everything, you know," he said seriously. "Pass on all your black belt skills to our daughter. Now you're not afraid she'll turn into a brute?" Vanessa raised an eyebrow. She hadn't forgotten all the times he'd privately called her violent. She was just waiting until she'd fully recovered to get her revenge. "We have to be prepared. People are already eyeing her." Lucas was obviously joking. "Look how scared you are." Vanessa found it hilarious. He'd been a doting father for all of one day. "Just wait until she gets married. You're going to cry your eyes out." Jason, who had been a bundle of nerves all day, finally seemed to relax, slumping down and resting his head gently on the bed beside her. Vanessa smiled and reached out to stroke his face. His chin was rough with stubble he clearly hadn't had time to shave. Lost in the moment, she heard him whisper, "You did so amazing, honey." Jason looked up, rubbing his cheek against her palm, his eyes glistening. "We're never doing that again." "A daughter. Damn, I'm kind of jealous." Lucas put his phone away and looked up at the girl, standing a short distance away. She was wearing a mermaid-style wedding dress, elegant and snow-white. A closer look revealed a heart-shaped cutout on the back, offering a tantalizing glimpse of smooth skin. The form-fitting design accentuated her slender waist and delicate curves. He watched her from behind as she playfully clasped her hands behind her back, leaving a trail of footprints in the sand. The rhythmic crash of the waves was a constant roar, yet his world felt preternaturally quiet. The sea breeze billowed through her waterfall of dark hair, and the white veil pinned to it danced along, like a blossoming flower. Watching her, Lucas felt as if he were in a dream. Maybe every guy has a dream like this. Just then, the girl turned around. She extended a hand, adorned with a lace glove, and offered him a breathtaking smile. He couldn't help but smile back as he slowly walked toward her. Jason just called. "He's a dad." Vanessa had a girl, Lucas said quietly as he walked beside her. Lily's mouth fell open in surprise. "So soon. It's the end of the month. I think this vacation has melted your brain," Lucas teased, poking her forehead. "I just lost track of time." Though Lucas sounded casual, he couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. He felt the delicate texture of her lace glove and gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "We should get married soon, too. After the wedding, we'll be a real family." "Aren't I already married to you?" Lily replied, playfully tugging on her white veil with a radiant smile. Her words made him dizzy for a second. He laughed, wrapping an arm around her waist and pulling her close. Looking at their merged shadows on the sand, they both instinctively raised their arms, forming a large heart on the beach. The New Year's holiday was early this year. They arrived home the day before the celebration. Planning a wedding, they were discovering, was an exhausting mix of excitement, anticipation, and mind-numbing logistics. Under Emily Carter's relentless prodding, they had finally settled on a home. The condo at the Bayside Towers they had first seen. All it needed was furniture. While it was true that move-in ready homes were often a rip-off, this place was different. It was a high-end development from the start, marketed for its views of the Sound. People who could afford a place like this didn't care about a premium, and the developer wasn't about to tarnish their luxury brand by cutting corners. No matter how closely they inspected it, they couldn't find a single flaw. Doing their own renovations and waiting for the fumes to clear would take too long to have it ready for the wedding. Emily's initial plan was to have them use the existing decor for the wedding, then move back into the rental while the new place was redone. But seeing how much Lily seemed to like it, she had happily deferred to the dork's wishes. That evening, Lily was sprawled on the sofa, endlessly scrolling through the photos they had taken. Staring at the images of the girl in the wedding dress, looking so pure and elegant, she could hardly believe it was her. Am I really that beautiful? Lucas sat beside her, stroking his chin as he mulled over the wedding details. He knew Lily would ask Aaron to be a bridesmaid, which meant he had to get Ryan to be a groomsman. Otherwise, if Aaron cooked up some torturous door games, no one else would have the guts to face her. Jason was married and had a newborn, so he was out as a groomsman. His spot could be filled by Leo. After some hesitation, Lucas pulled out his phone. He stared at his chat with Ryan, then froze. In the end, Ryan hadn't asked him or Jason for a single penny. It seemed he was just going to let the relationship quietly fade away. Lucas thought for a long time before finally typing a message. Lucas Carter, you in for being a groomsman? Ryan Brooks. You even have to ask? Lucas Carter, how are things with you and Sophie? Ryan Brooks, we haven't spoken. Lucas Carter, you're not going to try and talk it out? Ryan Brooks, her mom wants 50 grand for a wedding gift. What's next? Lucas, I really love her, but I can't do it. I can't afford to marry her. Lucas sighed. Ryan saw the situation clearly. This wasn't a problem that could be solved by him and Jason lending him some money. If Sophie didn't change, her mother would always be a looming threat. Aren't we going to your mom's? She wanted to see the wedding photos. Lily's voice cut through his thoughts. Although he had already sent the digital copies, older people seemed to prefer physical albums. It's late. We're going over there for New Year's tomorrow anyway. We can take them then, Lucas said with a lazy yawn. Lily nodded. She glanced at a video Emily had sent her on WhatsApp. It was of Dottie, rolling around on the floor of Lucas's parents' house. She suddenly missed her. She suspected Lucas had forgotten all about the cat. He hadn't mentioned picking her up since they got back. A moment later, she climbed into his lap, rubbing her head against his chin like a cat. What's up? He asked, curious. Will you play a game with me? I'm good now, I promise I won't feed. The girl nuzzled him, murmuring, I even got back to Diamond on my own today. Emma didn't even have to carry me. Lucas racked his brain, tried to remember a single time in the past 2 years when he had ever implied that he thought she was bad at the game. He couldn't recall anything. I've never thought you were a bad player. Lily mumbled, her voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz. I know. I was just afraid of making you mad. You play Malphite, I'll play Yasuo. Deal? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Deal. After just a few games, Lucas was already sweating bullets. Any more of this, and it might not be a wedding. It wasn't that Lily was playing poorly. On the contrary, she kept landing these massive, multi-person knockups. Lucas was worried that if they kept playing, he'd be the one calling her daddy. As for the few ultimates she'd accidentally fired into the enemy fountain, he chose to ignore them after he died. Best not to jeopardize marital harmony. The next day, New Year's. As soon as the sun was up, Lucas took Lily over to his parents' house, planning to stay for a bit before picking up Sophia. But when they walked in, they found Sophia already sitting on the sofa with Emily, both of them huddled over a phone, laughing and chatting. From the sound of it, they were critiquing the wedding photos. Lucas froze. Lily, on the other hand, just stared blankly and said, Mom. Sophia looked over with a smile. Hello, dear. She patted Emily's shoulder. This is your mom, too. Before Lily could turn beet red, Emily waved her hands dismissively. Not until the wedding gift is paid. You're just teasing her. How did you get to Seattle, Sophia? Lucas asked, leading Lily to the sofa. The more he thought about it, the weirder it was. Emily proudly patted the car keys on the coffee table. Your old mom drove, of course. And Dad actually let you drive that far by yourself? I snuck out while he was sleeping, Emily said with a triumphant grin. Sophia, don't bother going back after the holiday. It's too much trouble. Just stay here with me, and we'll wait for the grandkids together. Haha. All right, Sophia agreed with a laugh, then turned to Lucas. Lucas, dear, when are you planning on having the wedding? Before Lucas could answer, Emily clamped a hand over his mouth. This knucklehead was supposed to be planning a wedding, but instead he runs off to Hawaii for half a month. We can't listen to him. We'll decide. Better to shut him up now than to hear him say he was still thinking about it and feel compelled to smack him on holiday. Sophia paused for a second, then nodded as if she understood completely. For the rest of the conversation, Lucas and Lily were mere bystanders, listening as the two matriarchs excitedly consulted a calendar and debated dates. February has so many good dates. What do you think of the 14th, Sophia? Oh, but that's so soon. Will there be enough time? Well, around here, people rarely get married in March. How about February 20th? Let's see, that's April 6th on the regular calendar. Hearing that date, Lucas instinctively glanced at Lily, only to find her already looking at him. Their eyes met, and he saw a world of tenderness in hers. She remembered, too. He couldn't help but smile, and she returned it with one of her own. It was a secret only they shared, and so, the wedding was set for April. the same spring they had met. When Robert Carter got home that evening, he was carrying a huge rack of roasted lamb ribs and several bags of groceries. With so many people, cooking from scratch was out of the question. He'd spent a pretty penny getting everything catered on a holiday, but he was practically beaming. He hoped that in a couple of years, there would be 2 more mouths to feed. The more, the merrier. As firecrackers popped outside, the 6 of them gathered around the dining table. It had never been this lively. Lucas sat next to Lily, watching his wife-to-be keep her head shyly bowed, and he couldn't stop grinning. Last year, they were just boyfriend and girlfriend. Now, a year later, he was officially licensed. "What are you doing? You're smiling like a cartoon pig," Emily said, looking at him as if he were a complete fool. "I'm getting married. You're telling me I can't smile?" Lucas retorted. "If you keep smiling like a creep, you're going to scare your bride away." "Huh, I'm not running away," Lily mumbled, lost in her own world. It seemed she hadn't even heard what they were talking about. "I like it when he's a creep." She only realized what she'd said after the words were out. She glanced around at everyone, but it was too late. Emily and Sophia exchanged a look and broke into identical, silly grins. The atmosphere grew more boisterous, the sound of their laughter drowning out the TV and even the fireworks outside. Lily was a little overwhelmed. It was the liveliest New Year's she had ever experienced. Usually, it meant an extra dish for dinner with her mom, listening to the firecrackers and the sounds of other families celebrating as they ate, then washing up and go to bed like any other night. The holiday always made her own home feel especially quiet, so she usually went to sleep earlier than usual. Last year she'd had Lucas. This year they were all family. "Have a drink," Robert said, filling Lucas's glass with whiskey. "I swindled this from your Uncle William. Don't be shy with it." "You got it," Lucas said with a nod. As Lily watched the line of Lucas's jaw, she felt a poke on her shoulder. "Sis, let's have a drink too," Emma said. She'd been eyeing the bottle of expensive red wine Robert had brought home for ages, but had never been allowed to touch it. Now was her chance. I can't drink that." Lily waved her hands frantically. The smell of the whiskey alone was making her head spin. It's okay. I'll get you the red." Before Lily could object, Emma had already darted into the kitchen, emerging moments later with the bottle. As she poured for Lily, Emma kept stealing glances at her parents. Seeing that they didn't seem to care, she couldn't decide if she was happy or sad. Lucas was about to ask why they weren't letting the wine breathe when he saw Emma pouring for Lily. "Don't let her drink," he shouted, horrified. "Why not?" Emma asked. "Your sister-in-law is a lightweight." He couldn't very well say that the last time his dork got drunk, she spent the night pinning him against walls. It was a holiday. Their reputations were at stake. If she got drunk again tonight, he couldn't even imagine what horrors awaited him. You should have said so earlier." "I already opened it," Emma lamented. "Well, I guess I'll have to make the sacrifice and drink it myself." Lucas rubbed his temples. "Mom," he said grimly, "you know how some people barely pass their classes? Turns out." Lucas. The joy of the upcoming wedding made the whole holiday feel even more festive. The dinner was a lively affair, the young couple constantly putting food on each other's plates and exchanging looks, which everyone else collectively pretended not to see. When a meal was nearly over, Robert filled his glass and slowly rose to his feet. "Another year has gone by in a flash," he said, his voice soft but firm. "At the end of the day, a man's life is about a few simple things. I'm a simple man, and I'm no exception. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank Lucas and Emma for letting me see my children grow up to be happy and successful. I want to thank Lily for your patience and your devotion to my son. And I want to thank Sophia for all the hard years you spent raising my daughter-in-law to be such an outstanding woman and for trusting us enough to become family." Robert raised his glass. "Happy New Year." Lucas was surprised his father had thanked everyone. He looked around the table. Every face was smiling. He hadn't mentioned Emily by name, but his gaze had been locked on hers the entire time. The two of them were having their own silent conversation, everything unsaid but perfectly understood. "Happy New Year. Here's to an even better one next year." Emma cheered, raising her glass. "Happy New Year." A chorus of glasses clinked together in a clear, bright note. After a few more sips of whiskey, Lucas's throat burned, but a sweet aftertaste lingered. Under the table, he found Lily's soft hand and squeezed it tight. Lily blushed, her eyes darting around anxiously, trying to signal that there were people watching. When he pretended not to notice, she finally gave up with a sigh of resignation. Lucas couldn't help but smile. Last year at this time, he thought the coming year would be the most anticipated of his life. It turned out this year was too. Everyone had been drinking, so no one could drive. Lucas had planned to sleep on the sofa and let Lily and Sophia take his room. But it turned out Emily and Sophia had things they wanted to talk about, and it was Robert who got kicked out. "Good night, Dad," Lucas said, holding a kettle of hot water as he passed his father on his way back to his room. Robert clenched his jaw and kept his eyes shut, pretending to be asleep, refusing to acknowledge his son's mockery. Lucas sighed dramatically and went into his room. He found Lily sitting on the bed in a W-sit, her cheeks puffed out as she glared at him. "Dizzy," she whined. "What did you expect, trying to keep up with Emma?" "Of course you're dizzy," Lucas said, gently pinching her cheek. "I made you some honey water." Emma could probably drink Jason, who drank for a living, under the table. Emily had worried about a lot of things over the years, but Emma getting drunk was never one of them. "Don't want it." Lily shook her head, then pulled Lucas onto the bed and gave him a light, playful bite. "You were bullying me again," she said, her voice full of grievance. "When did I bully you? There were so many people there, and you still held my hand. And all you had to do was not say anything. See? No one even noticed," Lucas said shamelessly. Lily huffed, then suddenly rolled on top of him, pinning him down and looking at him from above. Feeling the air conditioner remote digging into her back, she shifted with a mischievous glint in her eye. "Lily, no, ma'am. I'm really drunk," Lucas said, trying to sit up, but she pressed him back down. "Who said you could call me ma'am? Then what should I call you?" "Call me my queen." "Wait, this is my parents' house." With most of his clothes gone, Lucas suddenly snapped to his senses, the alcohol shock purged from his system. He hissed in a whisper, terrified of making a sound. "My mom and her mom are right next door. The signal's bad here. Can't we play this game when we get home?" But Lily just leaned in closer, a few strands of her hair tickling his face. Then she breathed hotly against his ear and repeated his own words back to him in a husky, seductive voice. "And all you have to do is not make a sound." Question mark. Lucas felt his world begin to crumble. He swore to himself that from this day forward, if anyone let Lily Thompson touch a drop of alcohol, he would fight them to the death. After the New Year's holiday, February was a blur of activity. Lily and Emily spent their days furnishing the new condo, while Lucas toured every reputable wedding planning company in Seattle. He took so long because he couldn't find one that met his standards. Many of them offered Asian-inspired wedding packages, but they felt inauthentic, full of strange, tacky details. The breakthrough came one day when he was complaining to Emma. "You're rich. Just plan it yourself," she said, rolling her eyes. The words hit him like a lightning bolt. Holy crap, I'm the rich guy. And so, the plan was set. They would hire the staff from a wedding company, but he would design the venue and choreograph the ceremony himself. You only get married once. It was worth going the extra mile. No need to skimp, not when he could afford it. "I fought my whole life. Can't I enjoy the spoils?" he thought, picturing a popular meme. Once the new place was fully set up, they began the move. After living in the rental for nearly 2 years, they had accumulated a surprising amount of stuff. Before they left for good, they had to get the broken air conditioner fixed. "Hello, you called for a repair?" the technician asked politely. Lucas nodded and let him in. He recognized the man. It was the same guy who had threatened to call the cops on him when he'd first tried to break the AC. Lucas shot a guilty glance at Lily, who was packing boxes in the living room, and quickly ushered the technician into the bedroom. "This unit hasn't been used in almost 2 years. Can you see if anything's wrong with it?" "It's not broken. It's just missing a few parts." "Wait a minute. I remember you. You're the kid who asked me to break this thing for you." The repairman suddenly shouted halfway through his work. He turned and studied Lucas's face, his voice growing more certain. "That's right. I was working on it, and you asked me what my job was." Question mark. Lucas was floored. "It's been 2 years. Do you really have that good of a memory?" Just as the man was speaking, Lily walked in to grab another box. She heard his words and froze in the doorway like a statue. Seeing her standing there, motionless, Lucas wanted to die. He knew she had long suspected he'd broken the AC on purpose, but she never had any proof. Now, 2 years later, the truth was out. The only thing missing was the air conditioner itself coming to life to deliver a tearful monologue about the injustice it had suffered. Lucas nervously wrung his hands, bracing for the righteous condemnation that was surely coming. Ever since that night over the holiday, he harbored a healthy fear of his dork's drunken alter ego. He was terrified of upsetting her, lest she secretly chug a bottle of wine and unleash some new form of chaos. As the old saying went, whoever's on top has the power in the relationship. That night, she had won utterly and completely. He hadn't even dared to fight back. To his astonishment, Lily just stood there for a moment, then walked into the room as if she hadn't heard a thing, picked up a box, and left. Now, it was Lucas's turn to be stunned. After a moment of silence in the bedroom, the old technician sidled up to him conspiratorially. Let me guess, kid. You had me break this AC so you could trick that girl into sharing a room with you, right? He looked proud of himself, a regular Sherlock Holmes who had cracked the case. That girl seemed quiet, easy to fool. He remembered her not being home when he'd first come, which was why he'd been so confused. A classic tale. Innocent girl takes pity on a poor soul with no AC, only to be slowly ensnared in his trap. Lucas was still dazed, but he nodded numbly. Yeah. Damn, that girl is gorgeous. You dog. You got game. The technician shot Lucas a thumbs up. I wish my son was half as devious as you. Maybe then I could finally get some sleep at night. Lucas managed a polite, dry laugh. He wasn't entirely sure if that was a compliment. So were other parts. Give them to me, and I'll put them back in. I threw them out ages ago, Lucas said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. When he decided to break it, he had fully intended to pay the landlord for a new one. After paying the repair fee and sending the man on his way, Lucas found Lily still bustling around the living room like a little bull. He went over and gently wiped the sweat from her brow. Why didn't you say anything just now? My conscience won't be clear until you yell at me a little. I'm used to it, Lily said, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear, her expression gentle. He'd already tricked her into being his wife. After the wedding, he'd probably trick her into having kids. What was the point of yelling at him now? Besides, she had actually been very happy when they started sharing a room. After all their belongings were moved, Lily didn't just leave. She went back and cleaned the entire apartment from top to bottom. She was the kind of tenant landlords dreamed of. Lucas had no choice but to help her. She was meticulous, leaving the place even cleaner than when he had first rented it. Standing in the entryway, looking at the empty rooms, Lily felt a corresponding emptiness in her own heart. Over 2 years, they had filled this space, bit by bit, with things that were uniquely theirs. Now, they had erased those traces with their own hands. In a daze, she could almost see Lucas on the sofa, thinking about work, or on the balcony with Dottie, lost in thought. She could see herself in the beginning, lying in her own bed, separated by a wall, her heart pounding too fast to sleep. This place held so many of their memories. This little rental had witnessed their journey from shy, fumbling love to the threshold of marriage. She didn't want to leave. Lily sniffled, her eyes welling up as she slowly closed the door for the last time. I'm going to our own home now. By the time they were settled in the new condo, it was already evening. The chandelier in the living room cast a bright, clean light, making the polished floors shine. Everything was brighter than the old rental. But maybe because he wasn't used to it yet, Lucas felt it was missing a certain warmth. He'd been so busy with the company lately that he'd barely been to the new place. Lily and his mom had handled almost everything. His one major contribution was the projector screen mounted on the living room wall. A TV just didn't make sense. For a living room this big, a small TV would look awkward, and a large one would be a waste. Other than for playing his PS5, it would just be a decoration. What young person even watches TV anymore? Unlike the rental, this place only had the massive floor-to-ceiling window in the living room. The balcony was off the master bedroom. So Lucas was curious where Dottie would decide to set up camp. Where do you want to live? He asked, scratching the cat's head. He expected her to curl up by the window, but instead, Dottie stood up and began to tour the apartment with the dignified air of a visiting head of state. She finally settled on the bay window in the study, hopping up and immediately making herself at home. Meow. Lucas suspected the cat had realized no one would be living in the study and was claiming the entire room for herself, but he had no proof. Even if they had a kid, the study would remain a study. At most, they'd try for a second, hope for a boy and a girl. If they got 2 of the same, so be it. No matter how much money they had, there was no need for 3 kids. I didn't put much furniture in here. You can decorate it however you like when you have time, Lily said, walking into the room. I usually work on the sofa anyway. Doesn't matter to me, Lucas said, looking around the empty study. Weren't you going to learn watercolor painting? You can use this as your studio. Then he noticed something was missing. Where's the computer? In the living room. You're not putting it in the study. The girl shook her head. Lucas kept asking if it was because she wanted to be closer to him, but she stubbornly refused to answer. A little while later, Lily dragged him back out to the living room. I think you'll like this the most. She walked over to a rocking chair by the window and gave it a gentle push. Your mom and I picked it out together. Lucas studied it for a moment. She was right. He eagerly sat down. Lily smiled in satisfaction, tied her hair into a ponytail, and headed for the kitchen. After a moment's thought, Lucas turned on the projector and queued up the scene from Pacific Rim where the 2 main characters pilot their Jaeger for the first time. It was a ritual. Ever since he first saw the movie, every time he got a new phone or a new monitor, he had to test the screen quality with that scene. hoping for an even more epic experience. As everyone knows, that movie has no sequel. A little while later, with the sounds of cooking coming from the kitchen, Lucas lay back in the rocking chair with Dottie in his lap, feeling a profound sense of peace. The condo was ready. They had moved in. Another major task was checked off the list. All that was left. He glanced at the window, where a large, bright red double happiness sticker was already affixed to the glass, radiating joy. All that was left was the wedding. The more he looked forward to it, the slower the days seemed to pass. Finally, early April arrived. Spring had just begun in Seattle. After a cleansing rain, the bare branches of the trees were covered in new, tender green buds. In the blink of an eye, it was the night before the wedding. This must have all been so expensive, Lily murmured, looking from the elaborate, embroidered gown laid out on the bed to the array of hair ornaments on the table. Who cares? You only get married once. Nothing is too extravagant, Vanessa said, trying to soothe her as she styled Lily's hair. She had to hand it to Lucas. She had no idea where he had sourced all of this, but it looked incredibly authentic, like something out of a historical epic. Lily, you look absolutely breathtaking. Vanessa couldn't even imagine how stunning she would look once she put on the gown. Lily just pursed her lips, too shy to speak. In the mirror, she could see Aaron and Chloe sprawled on the bed, watching a movie. A wave of relief washed over her. Thank goodness there were no door games this time. If Aaron had learned anything from Vanessa's wedding, Lily worried Lucas would never be able to get through the door to get her. Just then, Aaron rolled off the bed and tiptoed over, her eyes scanning Vanessa from head to toe. Is there something on my face? Vanessa asked without looking up. Don't you need to be resting? I've been out of my confinement month for ages. Why would I still need to be coddled? Vanessa scoffed. I'm tougher than I look. By the way, I'm a mom now, and Lily's getting married tomorrow. When are you finally going to get a boyfriend? Next time, for sure, Aaron said with a cheerful, evasive grin. Lily watched her in the mirror and sighed, saying nothing. She knew Aaron would never date anyone. Aaron was wearing an off-the-shoulder dress, but she had pulled the neckline up unnaturally high, making sure the small scar on her chest was completely hidden. Over in the groom's suite. This robe is so cool, Leo said, admiring himself in the mirror. He was wearing the groomsman's attire, an embroidered silk robe modeled after the uniforms of the Imperial Guard in a famous fantasy epic. I feel like a real-life warrior. Look, I hadn't dreamed of wearing armor or something equally epic. The more he looked, the more he liked it. Jason, who was sulking because he couldn't be a groomsman, came over and felt the fabric. Damn, I want to be a secret agent, too. You're too good to be a mere Imperial Guard, Lucas said from the bed, his tone deadpan. You're much better suited to be the evil eunuch prime minister. Screw you. Once they were done trading insults, Leo jumped back in. Lucas, can I keep this robe? Of course. It was custom-made for you. You think I'm going to sell it on eBay? Why did I have to get married? Jason lamented, slapping his thigh. He then nudged Ryan, who had been standing silently in the corner. Ryan, you should change into yours, too. Let me see. It's still early, Ryan said, rubbing his raccoon-like dark circles. He looked completely drained. Lucas knew he hadn't been sleeping well. After you help me pick up Lily, you can sneak back up here and get some rest, he said gently. The ceremony isn't until evening. The plan was a blend of old and new traditions. He'd go get the bride in the morning and bring her to the hotel, but the ceremony itself would be held at dusk. The procession to get the bride was fancier than at Jason's wedding, but he'd skipped all the modern stuff like the red envelope games. The traditional ritual was complicated enough. Adding more would just short-circuit everyone's brains. After Ryan nodded, Lucas lay back down, staring blankly at the hotel ceiling. I can't do this. I'm too nervous. He hadn't felt it much before. They already had their license, and life felt pretty normal. But as the day drew closer, the anxiety had built until now. He was too wired to sleep. Getting married was 100 times more nerve-wracking than getting the license. How is that even possible? After another half hour of tossing and turning, Lucas checked his phone. It was 4 a.m. Hey, babe, want to play? Jason taunted, having watched Lucas wriggle around on the bed like a worm all night. He still hadn't forgotten how Lucas had mocked him on his own wedding day. I'm not playing games. I'm sleeping. Are you sleeping? No. Oh, when I get married, I definitely won't be nervous, Jason said in a sing-song, taunting voice. Suddenly, Ryan, who had been lying motionless on the sofa, sat bolt upright. I have a video of that. His zombie-like movement made Jason jump. Jesus, I thought you were asleep. How had he managed to lie there without moving for a solid 30 minutes? Was this the power of heartbreak? Ryan didn't answer. He just scrolled through his phone. Soon, Lucas's voice filled the room. Are you kidding? It's just a wedding. What's there to be nervous about? Then, Jason's voice from the phone. What will you do if you get nervous? Ryan cranked the volume to max. The room was filled with Lucas's confident, dismissive shout. I'll wash my hair while doing a handstand. A long, heavy silence descended upon the room. Lucas was suddenly wide awake. He had completely forgotten about that. He sat up to see Jason's face split into a beatific, friendly smile. Do you want to do it yourself? Or should we help you? We're friends, right? You wouldn't do that, Lucas said, backing away. He had a terrible feeling they were serious. Where was all this brotherly love when you were mocking me? Jason spat, then lunged, tackling him. Get him to the bathroom. Just as Ryan was about to join in, his phone buzzed. Who the hell is texting me at this hour? He muttered, frowning. Hold him down. I'll be right there. Ryan glanced at his phone and froze. Sophie, I'm outside your apartment building. Can you come out? I need to talk to you. The men all stared at the message, then at each other, utterly speechless. 20 minutes later, a black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Ryan got out first, jogging as he scanned street. The cold air stung his lungs. He didn't care. He just had to find her. Whether she wanted to see him or officially break up, he couldn't let her stand outside alone at this hour. It was just after 4 a.m. The world was dark and silent. Not a single car was on the road. Only the lonely, pale light of the street lamps cut through the blackness. Then, under a distant lamppost, he saw a familiar figure. The short-haired girl was wearing a light pink pajama set, a small purse slung over her shoulder, and slippers on her feet. The whole outfit was bizarrely out of place. The April night was still cold. Her ears and toes were bright red. She stood shivering under the streetlight, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Before Ryan even knew what he was doing, he was standing in front of her, shrugging off his own jacket and draping it over her shoulders. What are you doing here? He only realized he'd spoken after the words were out. He tried to act casual to keep his voice steady. The moment his jacket was off, the cold wind seeped into his bones. His heart ached, whether from the cold or from the sight of her. He couldn't tell. Ryan, she began, her voice trembling with cold and unshed tears. She raised a hand, then let it fall, finally clutching the hem of his shirt. Let's get our marriage license as soon as the sun comes up, she said, her eyes red. And then, you take me and we run away. Okay. Are you serious? Ryan felt a wave of dizziness. He had to be asleep on the hotel sofa, dreaming this. It was just like the dreams he'd had countless times over the past few months. He'd lost count of how many times he'd dreamed of this exact scene, only to wake up to an empty reality and another sleepless night. Of course I'm serious. I didn't even change my clothes. Sophie suddenly shouted, then broke into heartbroken sobs. I snuck out while my mom was sleeping. Ryan, I have nothing left. Please, just take me with you. Watching the girl he loved cry before him, Ryan felt his own eyes burn. He pulled her into a tight embrace. After a long time, he remembered he was supposed to be a groomsman today, eloping with his girlfriend on his best friend's wedding day. He didn't know what to do. Then he heard a calm, familiar voice from behind him. Just go. I have plenty of groomsmen. I don't need you. He turned to see Lucas standing there, a faint smile on his face. Jason was a few steps behind, panting from the run. Lucas, Ryan whispered. Lucas couldn't help but smile. He never thought Lily's harebrained advice would actually work. One of them was crazy enough to suggest it, and the other was crazy enough to listen. A perfect match. Jason didn't say anything. He walked right up to Ryan, still catching his breath, and pulled a bank card from his wallet, pressing it into Ryan's stunned hand. This is my secret stash. It's all I've got, man. Take it. And don't worry about her mom calling the cops. This isn't illegal. Besides, I've got you back. Trash. Lucas scoffed at Jason, then turned back to Ryan. I've got more. If you need it, just ask. Don't stay in Seattle. Pick a city you like and go. Just don't come back for a while. Ryan tried to get a clear look at their faces, at the friends he had known for years, but his vision was blurry. He wiped the tears from his eyes. Stop crying and get going, Lucas said, pushing him impatiently. There was no time to wait for Ryan to pack. He and Jason had to get back to get ready for the bride pickup. This was it. This was goodbye, for who knew how long. And so, Lucas watched as the two of them, hand in hand, ran off into the night. At first, he could hear their panting and the frantic slap of their footsteps, but as they got farther away, the sounds faded into nothing. Come back when you have a daughter, Jason suddenly yelled, waving. Run faster, Lucas shouted after them. Damn, the groomsmen eloped on the morning of the wedding. Lucas started to laugh. He would remember this for the rest of his life. One of the groomsmen eloped, Vanessa announced, putting down her phone. Lily flinched. What? The groomsmen? Not the groom, Erin said, rolling her eyes, then giggling at her friend's hopelessly devoted reaction. The loss of a groomsman was a minor hiccup. The wedding proceeded on schedule. Thanks to the careers of both Lucas's and Jason's fathers, the guest list was extensive. The entire hall was filled to capacity. Once everyone was seated, the officiant, dressed in a matching silk robe, stepped onto the stage to deliver the opening remarks. He was a true professional, his voice magnetic, reciting classical poetry with effortless grace. He had cost Lucas a small fortune. Lucas took his place on the stage, took a deep breath, and bowed to the crowd before walking to the center of the hall. A soaring, beautiful melody filled the air. The guests listened intently, assuming it was a standard piece for a traditional-style wedding. They had no idea it was actually the main theme from the video game Final Fantasy XIV. Answers. He had chosen it specifically. It wasn't for commercial use, just borrowing a piece from a fellow artist for his own wedding. Just then, the officiant called out, "The groom will now make his obeisance and part the fans." At the command, Lucas's heart gave a little flutter. In a moment, he would finally see his dork in her wedding gown. He hadn't been allowed to see it. Aaron had helped Lily design it in secret. After he bowed, 2 rows of attendants holding large, circular fans parted to the sides. With a crescendo in the music, the grand doors at the far end of the hall began to open. He had spent weeks choosing the music, but now, he couldn't hear a single note. All his attention was fixed on the doorway. Finally, the doors swung fully open, and the bride, flanked by her 2 bridesmaids, emerged. Lily held a fan before her face, her body draped in a magnificent red and gold embroidered gown. A phoenix coronet rested on her head, and a long, flowing train trailed behind her. She was the very picture of regal elegance. The low murmur of chatter in the hall instantly ceased. Every eye was fixed on her. Only when she reached the halfway point did the hushed whispers resume. "Holy crap, is that my sister-in-law? You don't even see stuff like this in movies. I don't care how much time passes, I'll say it again. Lucas Carter is a lucky bastard. What the hell am I, a single guy, doing at a wedding? Look, that's my daughter-in-law." With each steady step she took, the distance between them shrank. 20 feet, 10, 5. She came closer and closer, until she finally stopped right in front of him. Lucas couldn't help but smile at her. She shyly lowered her eyes in response. Then, with her hands held flat and her long, flowing sleeves draped over them, she bowed her head and performed a slow, formal curtsy. Watching her, so shy and yet so serious, Lucas was stunned for a moment before remembering he had to bow in return. This celestial, fairy-like beauty was his wife. An attendant brought forth a red silk ribbon with a large bow in the center. They each took an end, their hands trembling slightly, and both took a deep breath. Then, to the sound of applause, they began their walk down the aisle side by side. With guests on either side, they didn't speak. Lucas kept his eyes fixed forward, but his entire awareness was on the girl in the magnificent gown beside him. His mind was a blank, and yet it was filled with 1,000 thoughts. All the complex emotions, all the memories, coalesced into a single, overwhelming realization. He was really, truly marrying Lily Thompson. The red ribbon connecting them felt as if it had been tied over a decade ago, and only today had they finally picked it up again. Following the officiant's instructions, they bowed to the heavens and the earth, and then it was time for the nuptial wine. "Present the vessels. The new couple will drink together, through sweetness and bitterness." An attendant brought forward a small, ornate gourd that had been split in 2. The bridesmaids and groomsmen filled each half with wine. The string connecting the 2 halves was very short, requiring them to lean in close to drink. They knelt on cushions at a low table, facing each other. They raised the cups, then brought them to their lips. Lucas deliberately leaned far over, noticing the red string between them had gone slack. He looked up and saw that Lily had leaned in, too, their foreheads almost touching. The short string now seemed to have plenty of room, but the gourd in Lily's hand was shaking uncontrollably. "Don't shake, or you'll spill it," Lucas whispered with a smile. Lily took a few quick breaths. I'm so nervous," she said, her voice small and timid, the untouchable, ethereal aura she had projected moments before completely shattered. They murmured to each other, and then, in one motion, they drank the wine. Lily drank a little too fast, and let out a small, choked cough. At the same time, the hall erupted in a thunderous wave of cheers and applause. The attendant took the 2 halves of the gourd, fitted them back together, and tied them tightly with a red cord before placing them back on the tray. Then, she brought out another tray, this one holding a pair of scissors and a red string. It was time to tie their hair. Lucas took the scissors from the attendant and gently gathered a few strands of hair from beside Lily's ear, then carefully snipped a lock. Lily's movements were even more delicate and precise as she did the same to him. She took both locks of hair, twisted them together into a single strand, and tied them tightly with the red string. She placed the bundle in a small red silk pouch, which the attendant took away. They stole a glance at each other, their eyes filled with joy. Lily was so happy she wanted to cry. The elaborate, ancient rituals resonated deeply, each step reinforcing the profound reality of what was happening. They were bound together. "Don't look at me. I'm afraid I'll start crying," she whispered. "You're already crying." If it wouldn't have been so out of place, Lucas would have leaned in and kissed her right then and there. "The ceremony is complete," the officiant declared. Lily slowly rose and stood beside Lucas again. This time, she finally dared to look up at him. Feeling her gaze, he took her hand. Lily shyly lowered her head, a sudden prickling at the back of her nose. The memory of him walking toward her out of the darkness when she was at her most helpless, their late-night talks in the hospital, fishing together at the reservoir. The past flashed before her eyes, and her heart pounded, whether from the memories or the moment, she couldn't tell. He was the person she had been searching for since she was a little girl. She never thought she'd be lucky enough to find him again. "We're finally married. Wifey," Lucas whispered, his eyes on the guest, but his words only for her. Lily sniffled, quickly wiping a tear from her eye. A smile bloomed on her face. "Please take care of me from now on, hubby." Before they joined a reception, there was one final ritual, the tea ceremony for their parents. Lucas glanced at Lily. She still looked serious and tense. He had debated this part for a long time, even considering just bowing to their parent from the stage. Emily and Robert had agreed, saying they could just skip it, since one side of the stage would have an empty chair. But since Lily and Sophia didn't mind, they had kept the tradition. "Mom." Lucas took a cup of tea from the attendant and offered it to Sophia. "Please have some tea." "Lucas, you look so handsome today." Sophia beamed, taking the cup and pressing a thick red envelope into his hand. She looked 10 years younger. Lucas grinned. "Mom, I have to disagree. Are you saying your son-in-law isn't handsome on a regular day?" "Haha, you're always handsome." Lucas chuckled and accepted the envelope, then turned to see how Lily was doing. Lily had just received her gift from Emily and was now moving with the officiant to stand before Robert. The man before her wore a kind, gentle smile. It was clear he already thought of her as his own daughter, but the word she needed to say was stuck in her throat. For some reason, she couldn't get it out. After a moment, the lively chatter in the hall quieted. Noticing the silence, Lily twisted her hands nervously. Her mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. It was a word she hadn't said in so many years. It was a thorn that had been lodged in her heart since childhood. Robert put a finger to his lips, signaling that it was okay, that she could just mouth the word if she couldn't say it. "You can keep calling me uncle," he whispered with a kind smile. Lily stared at him, and a film of tears blurred her vision. A choked laugh escaped her lips, and through her tears, she said, "Dad." "Dad." The word finally escaped Lily's lips. She had her own little family now, her own new parents. In this vast world, she had finally found a place to land, a place that would have her. "Hey," Robert Carter answered, his smile wider and brighter than Lucas had ever seen. Beside him, Emily was already dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. She saw her husband, outwardly calm but frozen in place, and nudged him. "The envelope, Robert." Robert snapped back to reality, and Lily accepted it with both hands, a picture of respect. Lucas just scratched the back of his head, a wry grin on his face. Everyone here was getting misty-eyed. It felt a little awkward not to join in. He hadn't planned on a tear-jerker wedding, but it turned out Lily and his mom were a matched set of softies. Still, that one word, Dad, held a universe of meaning for his goofy girl. The themed wedding, with its intricate details, was surprisingly brief. The whole ceremony took less than 40 minutes, and then it was time for toasts and dinner. William Montgomery watched the newlyweds make their way from table to table, a fond, gentle smile on his face. He'd known Lucas since the kid was running around in diapers. He had watched him grow up, a surrogate son in every way that mattered. He smiled again, raised his phone, and snapped a picture. "Scarlett, your photography skills are terrible." "Scarlett. Wait, has Lily gotten even prettier? I swear, if I pull another all-nighter, I'm going to change my last name in shame." William, "Well, Scarlett, look at you. Asking for a favor and complaining about the service." Scarlett, "William, if you're so curious, why don't you fly back and see for yourself? You think your Uncle Robert would turn you away?" Scarlett, "It's their wedding day. Do you really think I'd show up and make things awkward for Lily? It's enough to know Lucas is happy. They both deserve it." She sent another photo. Scarlett, "Dad, what do you think of this suit?" I'm wearing it to court later. William, very sharp. When are you coming back? We should go skiing up north. I saw some pictures, it looks incredible. Scarlett, after I wrap up this case, I'll come home and spend a few days with you. William had just put his phone down when Robert leaned over. I hear Sylvia's in the country these days. You're not going to see her. What's there to see? You're both getting older. She understands you. You understand her. It was all a misunderstanding back then. What's stopping you? Robert's tone was uncharacteristically blunt, almost childish. What's past is past, William said with a soft sigh, then managed a smile. That she remarried. It's a knot in my heart. We can't lie to ourselves about that. He looked at his old friend. You've gotten old, Robert. You've never been this much of a nag. I'm not trying to get you two back together. But Scarlett suffered so much because of what happened between you. Don't you think you owe her some peace? At the very least, take a trip with her together, as her parents. William was silent. While they were talking, Lucas and Lily arrived at their table. Still in their elaborate wedding attire, they each held a glass. Lucas had made sure Lily's was filled with sparkling water. He wasn't about to let her touch any more alcohol, and in the dim light, no one could tell the difference. This is my Uncle William, Lucas said, his voice full of genuine affection. He watched me grow up. Lily froze for a second, then respectfully raised her glass. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. William smiled, downed his glass of scotch in one go, and pulled a thick envelope from his pocket. He ignored Lucas completely, pressing it into Lily's hands. This little brat has been lazy his whole life. I'm afraid you'll have your hands full. His eyes twinkled. If he ever gives you any trouble, you tell his parents. Or you can tell me. I'll take care of him for you. Lily, already flustered, was now completely stunned. After the toast, Lucas didn't move on. He leaned inconspiratorially toward William. Uncle, my dad finished all that Pappy Van Winkle you gave him. When can I get a few more bottles? William shot him a withering look. You're the head of company now. You still need to ask me for handouts. That's not the point, Lucas said, shaking his head with mock seriousness. No matter how much I make, it's all just cold, hard numbers. The things you give me have the warmth of family. You Carters are all thieves. William sputtered, shooting a glare at Robert before turning back to Lucas. Fine, come on my place and get it. The moment Lucas and his new bride walked away, Emma scurried over to William's side, diligently refilling his glass. Uncle, don't be mad, she cooed. My brother's been a jerk since birth. We shouldn't stoop to his level. Her voice was impossibly sweet, and she looked ready to give him a shoulder massage. Why would I be mad at him? See? I'm much better, right? I'm a good one. Emma fluttered her eyelashes. William nodded emphatically. Emma's the best. So, shouldn't I get a share of whatever you give my brother? She pouted. I won't take your liquor. Cash is fine. Meanwhile, Lucas scanned the room, planning their next stop. The order of toasts mattered. Close relatives and important mentors came first. Friends and classmates could wait. No one would hold it against them. He spotted Professor Ian sitting at a table with Robert's colleagues, a group of gray-haired academics laughing and chatting. The old man sat alone, a bastion of stoicism, only speaking when spoken to. Lucas hadn't actually expected him to come. He remembered the professor's invitation to bring Lily over for dinner, an invitation he'd completely forgotten about in the chaos of the merger and wedding preparations. Taking a deep breath, he led Lily over to the table. Professor Ian was not about to give him a warm welcome. The little punk had promised to bring his fiancée over for a meal and then vanished without a trace. Professor, a toast to you. Oomph. Seeing the professor's stony expression, Lucas nudged Lily. The girl understood immediately, her voice gentle and sincere. Hello, Grandpa. By now, Lily had become a merciless toasting machine. Whatever Lucas told her to say, she said. It was just sparkling water anyway. At first, she'd been downing each glass in one go, but after seeing the shocked looks on people's faces, she started sipping it slowly, just like Lucas did. May you have a long and happy life together. The professor's expression softened. He finally took a good look at Lily. She wasn't just pretty. Her demeanor screamed sincerity. He'd been worried Lucas was being taken for a ride, but now he was worried it was the other way around. If this little punk ever bullies you, you tell me. I'll handle him. Lucas blinked. What? How was it that every single relative and mentor he had was saying the exact same thing? Did he really look that villainous? He soon figured out. With every toast Lily made, his social standing dropped another point, and another person was added to the list of those ready to handle him. It was a world ruled by looks, he concluded. No one believed he was a good guy. Finally, after the last toast was made, the two of them had a moment to sit down and eat. A swarm of kids, fascinated by the wedding, buzzed around Lily, clamoring for wedding candy. Some had clearly been sent by their parents, hoping for a bit of good luck. Bride sister, can I have some candy? Of course. Lily patiently handed out the fruit candies she'd prepared. "Bride sister, me too," Erin Thompson shouted, waving her hand high in the air. Lucas nearly choked. He never thought Erin would have the guts to call Lily's sister in front of everyone. Clearly, the kids hadn't expected it either. They all froze, momentarily forgetting their mission. "Here you go," Lily said, walking over to hand a piece to Erin personally. Sister, me too. "Here you are." Lucas sat and watched as Lily buzzed around, finally distributing all the candy before returning to his side. "I'm so tired," she whispered. "Lily's sister, I want some too," Lucas said with a wicked grin, seeing her hands were now empty. If she'd had any left, he wouldn't have said it. "I saved one for you." "Huh?" Lucas's world tilted for a second. "How is that possible?" As if in a trance, he watched her open her small hand like a blooming flower. Nestled in her palm was a single fruit candy. She gently took his hand and placed the candy in his palm, her smile soft and radiant. "I'm paying you back," she said earnestly. "Pay me back." "Yes, paying you back." It took Lucas a few seconds to understand. The few pieces of candy he'd given a little girl all those years ago. She was now returning one to him at their wedding. "That's a long overdue debt," he said, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. He forced a smirk. "I haven't even charged you interest yet." Lily ducked her head, her face flushing as she fidgeted with her hands. Her earlobes turned a deep crimson before she finally managed to whisper, "Well, I'm giving you myself, aren't I?" "Bro, your face and your eyes are really red," Emma observed, popping up beside him. "I've had too much to drink." Lucas snapped, shooing her away. By the time Lily got home, it was past 9. The apartment was decorated with festive touches, and all the lights had been left on, casting a warm, celebratory glow. Lucas was still seeing off the last of the guests. She sat on the edge of the bed, her heart starting to pound as she looked at the brand-new bedding. The sheets, the comforter, even the pillows were all a deep, passionate red. Rose petals were scattered across the blankets. Lucas, with his library of history books, had certainly done his research. Lily smiled to herself, tracing the pattern on the silk. She carefully removed her elaborate hairpins and ornaments, letting her long hair cascade down her back. After scrolling through the photos Erin had sent her, she tossed her phone aside and, with a squeal of pure joy, rolled back and forth across the bed. She ended up on her stomach, burying her face in the comforter, her slender legs kicking gleefully in the air. It suddenly hit her that this was the exact same thing she'd done the very first time she'd messaged Lucas. All she had sent was a simple good evening. Looking back, she had no idea where she'd found the courage. Lily picked up her phone again, a shy smile playing on her lips, and changed Lucas's contact name from Lucas to Hubby. Just looking at the word made her heart flutter all over again. The wedding itself hadn't mattered, not really. All that mattered was that she was finally married to Lucas. Meow. Dottie, intrigued by her wedding dress, hopped onto her lap. But this time, the human who usually let her lounge for as long as she wanted gently picked her up and placed her back in her cat bed. "Be a good girl tonight, Dottie. You can't sleep here." "Mro." Hearing the front door open, Lily quickly grabbed the round, ornate fan from the nightstand and sat up straight. Everything else had followed tradition. She might as well see this part through. She'd read that, like a veil, the fan was meant to be removed by the groom. She gave the fan a playful twirl, then took a deep, nervous breath. "Beneath the willows, I hear the zither play." Lucas sang off-key as he stumbled into the room, half drunk and grinning from ear to ear. The sweet goofball, who used to be too shy to even talk to him, was finally his wife. It didn't matter how many times the frog had outsmarted the scorpion. What mattered was that the frog was finally boiled. He stopped in the doorway of the bedroom, staring. He'd been looking at her for hours, but seeing her now, sitting so demurely by the window, still took his breath away. If Erin saw this, she'd scream at him. "Using your wedding as an excuse to cosplay. You bastard, Lucas." The thought made him chuckle. He walked over and gently took the fan from her hands, revealing her exquisite, captivating face. "Time to consummate the marriage, wifey." Lily turned her head away, silent. "What, no hubby for me?" Lucas's words were laced with the scent of alcohol. "We went to all the trouble of having this themed wedding," she whispered, leaning in close. Her warm breath tickled his ear as she spoke. "Are you sure you want to hear hubby, or would you rather hear husband?" As rustling sounds filled the room, Lily suddenly squeaked. "Wait, I'm not mentally prepared. We're an old married couple. What's there to prepare for? Can we skip the bubble gum tonight?" At the mention of their old inside joke, Lily's carefully constructed poise crumbled. You're a pervert," she stammered, clinging to her last line of defense. "We only get one wedding day," Lucas mused thoughtfully. I guess it's okay, Lily mumbled, letting him pull her into his arms. She hid her face against his chest. My cycle, it shouldn't be an issue right now. After a long kiss, Lily seemed to remember something. She poked his cheek, pouting. Aren't we supposed to be just good, platonic friends? He'd been using that line to tease her since they first met. The great Master Carter scoffed. Who's friends with you? The Memorial Day weekend passed. Once the novelty of being married wore off, they found that life went on much as it had before. The only real difference was that Lily no longer had an excuse not to call him hubby, though they both fell back into using their names out of habit. Lucas didn't push it. One morning, with nothing pressing at the company, Lucas was still lazing in bed close to noon. If it weren't for a planned lunch at Jason's, he probably would have stayed there all afternoon. He groggily reached for his phone to check the time and saw a message from his mother. It was a link to an article with a headline that read, Experts claim radiation from electronic devices may cause infertility. Lucas quickly turned his phone off, convinced he must have opened it wrong. The shock jolted him fully awake. Lucas, Mom, you can't believe these experts. Next I'll be telling you water is poison. Emily had never sent him this kind of junk before. She never fell for it. What was going on? Emily, of course I know it's fake. Lucas, I'm not an idiot. Lucas, a giant question mark materialized over his head. Lucas, then why did you send it to me? Emily, I just wanted to confirm with you. Lucas, Mom, not everyone gets married and immediately has kids. Most people our age can barely support themselves. Emily, you tell me, do you not have the money? Or do you not have the time? Or is it that Lily doesn't want children? Give me one good reason, and I promise I will never bring this up again. He was speechless. He couldn't refute a single point. Lucas, by the way, I'm going over to Jason's today to officially become a godfather. Maybe you could just make do with his daughter for now? Emily didn't reply. A cold sweat broke out on Lucas's forehead. He tossed his phone aside and bolted into the living room, wrapping his arms around Lily, who was curled up on the couch reading. We should go. Now, I'm afraid my mom might be on her way over. So let her come over, Lily said calmly, setting her textbook aside. Seeing her lack of urgency, Lucas gently shook her by the shoulders. If my mom comes over, you'll be a widow. He could guarantee Robert was getting an earful right now, and once Emily was done with him, she'd come for the main culprit. Lily looked at him, her expression placid. She's our mom now, she corrected him softly, as if teaching a child. Lucas took a deep breath. Okay, so our mom is coming over to kill me, which means I'll have to ask our mom for help. But you know what our mom is like, so our mom will definitely defend me. But if our mom still kills me anyway, then won't our mom lose face? The girl's eyes gradually glazed over, her clear, beautiful gaze losing focus. And what if they get into a fight over it? Should I side with our mom or our mom? Lucas pressed on. A few seconds later, seeing the faint smirk on his face, she couldn't help but lightly bonk her forehead against his. He was doing it on purpose. Did you make her mad? Lily asked, her voice softening, unable to stay mad at him. Lucas, still seeing stars, rubbed his head and handed her his phone. See for yourself. Lily read the chat history with Emily, her expression a mixture of sympathy and exasperation. Her husband seemed to have a death wish, constantly looking for trouble. You could just make do with my goddaughter. Only Lucas could think of something so absurd and actually say it. We should go. Now, she said, quickly getting up and pulling him off the floor. Lucas moved with unprecedented speed. Within 2 minutes, they were dressed, out the door, and hand in hand. The weather had finally warmed up for good. The trees and bushes were a lush green, and a gentle breeze skimmed across the surface of Puget Sound, sending ripples across the water before kissing their faces. It was refreshing. They walked along the waterfront path. Lily carefully avoided the cracks between the gray, paving stones, hopping from one to the next. Lucas watched her with a look of fond exasperation, patiently matching her slow pace. Our mom is definitely going to kill you, Lily muttered under her breath. Lucas shrugged. And that's why your very wise husband made a strategic retreat. Come on, let's go see our goddaughter. His gaze drifted to a few kids running around in the distance. You know, he said with a grin, we're married now. Just you wait. See how my mom starts pressuring us to have a baby. Today's incident was just a minor skirmish. His mother hadn't even gotten serious yet. Idle hands are the devil's workshop. Emily worked a cushy government job, and he knew that when a group of women her age got together, the conversation inevitably turned to their children. For years, she'd had to listen to them brag about their daughters-in-law. His marriage to Lily had probably been a huge victory for her. Now, she was listening to them go on about their grandchildren, and it was only a matter of time before that pressure landed on him. My mom is already pressuring me. Lily mumbled, looking down. That's our mom. Do you want kids? The initial envy he'd felt when Jason's daughter was born had faded. He was back to his more relaxed, let's enjoy a couple of years, just the two of us mindset. He wanted them, sure, but he didn't feel the rush. The truth was, he wasn't mentally prepared. I don't mind either way. It's up to you, the girl said, her ears turning red as she accidentally stepped on a crack. Nope, that one doesn't count. I get an extra life. As they reached Jason's condo building, Lucas remarked, first we were neighbors with Aaron, now we're neighbors with Jason. It's a shame it's not as easy to hang out with Aaron anymore. Just you watch. In 2 years, tops, she'll be living in the apartment below ours. Lucas did a quick mental calculation. It seemed about right. In all of Polaris Interactive, besides him and Jason, the highest earners were Aaron and Leo Jenkins, followed by the newcomer, Alex Grant. And Chloe, he supposed. With the company nearly doubling in size last year, the art department had split into 2 teams. Chloe was now the lead of the second team. But the girl seemed to have gotten used to being Aaron's second-in-command. Even though she now had nearly the same authority, she still followed Aaron around like a little shadow, getting her coffee and running errands, much to the bewilderment of her own team. Come in, come in. The housekeeper is just finishing up lunch. It'll be ready in a minute. Jason greeted them at the door with a wide grin. Lucas scanned the living room, but saw no sign of a baby. Lunch can wait. Bring out your daughter and let her godfather have a look. Jason chuckled at his eagerness. Making this guy the godfather was the right call. He was clearly going to be more involved than any of their actual relatives. She's upstairs. I'll go get her. Make yourselves comfortable. A few moments later, Jason and Vanessa came down together. Vanessa was holding the baby. She sat next to Lily, immediately capturing the girl's full attention. But Lily didn't forget her task. She pulled a small gold locket and 2 tiny gold bracelets from her bag and dangled them in front of the baby. The infant, curious about everything, immediately reached for them. Hey, you didn't have to get her something so nice, Jason said, nudging Lucas with his elbow. It's for my goddaughter, not for you. Lily's eyes were wide with wonder. She's so well-behaved. Vanessa snorted. This little monster is just storing up her energy. She's waiting until Jason and I are about to pass out from exhaustion to start crying. Every single night, right on schedule. As Lily cautiously extended a finger, the baby, Claire, wrapped her tiny hand around it. Lily's heart melted, her eyes sparkling. When she'd seen her before, Claire was still so new, her face all wrinkly. Now her big, bright eyes were wide open. She was impossibly cute. Lucas smiled as he watched Lily's adoring expression. She really did love kids. He'd seen it when she played with his little cousin Maya. So, when are you two planning on having kids? Jason asked as Lucas turned back to him. I'm 23 now. Maybe when I'm 25 or 26. Lucas was baffled. What is with you people? Is having kids the only thing to do right after getting married? First, his mom, now his best friend. What was happening to the world? A few years ago, the question would have been what game he was playing. I was just hoping our kids could go to school together, have each other's backs, Jason said, a little crestfallen. He was an only child and had never had a childhood best friend. He'd always been envious of that kind of bond. You're not worried about me anymore. Just have a daughter, and it'll be fine. Then I get to be the godfather. Lucas smirked. He'd never seen a more hopeless girl dad. They were all close enough that meals were informal affairs. They ate in Jason's dining room, where the housekeeper had prepared a spread of 6 dishes and a soup, as lavish as any restaurant meal. Lily, your appetite is almost as big as mine now, Vanessa said mid-meal, looking at Lily in surprise. She quickly swapped the plate of ribs in front of her, which she had barely touched, with a plate of spicy and sour potatoes that Lily had nearly demolished. She remembered a time when Lily would be full after just a few street hot dogs. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. She turned to Lucas and slammed her hand on the table. Lucas Carter, how long have you two been married? Are you already starving your wife? Lucas just stared dumbfounded. Lily, her cheeks puffed out like a hamster's, glanced guiltily at Lucas and suddenly lost her appetite. Lucas had never been so speechless in his life. He blinked, thinking they're just potatoes. How good can they be? He picked up one of the few remaining slivers with his chopsticks and tried it. They were in fact surprisingly delicious. He turned to Lily. When we leave, let's offer their housekeeper double her salary to come work for us. Not happening, Jason said with a sly grin. What if you decide not to pay her? After all, you don't even feed your own wife. I do. That evening, with the company still on holiday break, Lucas was lounging on the sofa, eyes closed, when he heard a small, pitiful sniffle from Lily. What's wrong? He asked, opening his eyes. Someone told me to stop drawing and go get a job in a factory. Ignore them, Lucas said with a lazy yawn. The internet is a zoo. You're going to find all sorts of creatures. Besides, you're painting art, not printing money. It's normal for some people not to like it. After all, some people claimed they didn't like money either. But he wrote a really long message yelling at me. The hell he did, Lucas grumbled, pushing himself up and walking over to the computer. Then he froze. Really long was an understatement. He had to scroll the mouse wheel several times just to get to the end of it. A quick skim revealed it was some obsessive fan of the character, tearing into Lily over the character's design, height, and personality, nitpicking every possible detail. The problem was, the character's official in-game portrait and concept art were all drawn by Lily herself. All she had done was post a piece of fan art of her own character on her Twitch art page, and now she was being accused of malicious OOC, out-of-character behavior. It was mind-boggling. If only they'd bothered to look at the artist's name. Lucas sat down in the chair, pulling Lily into his lap. He typed a simple reply with both hands, TLDR. The best way to deal with a troll was to refuse to be dragged down to their level, where they could beat you with experience. If you completely ignored their bait, they'd eventually self-destruct from rage. Lily giggled. Just as she was about to stand up and hug him, there was a knock at the front door. Coming. Lucas left her at the computer and went to the door. Are you expecting another delivery? No, Lily said, shaking her head. A sudden chill went down Lucas's spine. I was careless. He opened the door. Sure enough, it was Emily. Mom. Emily beamed at him, a smile both motherly and terrifying. Oh, so you do remember I'm your mother. I was starting to think you'd found a new, less pushy mom to make do with. I'm sorry. I was just joking with you, Lucas said, quickly ushering her inside. He had Lily sit with her on the sofa while he grabbed his laptop and pretended to be busy with work. His mother would never give Lily a hard time, but she would definitely find an opportunity to give him one. If Lily had received that clickbait article, she would have just patiently explained to her mother-in-law that those experts were full of it. It would never have occurred to her that it was a subtle hint. Emily's tactics were useless against her. This was the brute force approach in action. I am too pure for your mind games. If you want something, you have to say it directly. But faced with such a sweet daughter-in-law, Emily couldn't bring herself to be blunt. Could she? Lucas almost laughed out loud at the thought, but the fear of his mother's ear-twisting wrath kept him in check. Emily saw Lucas engrossed in his work and looked at the perfectly behaved Lily. All the strategies she'd prepared were useless. Even if Sophia was on her side, this was ultimately the kid's decision. She could nudge, but to demand, that would change everything. And Lily was such a good, obedient girl. She desperately wanted a grandchild, but she was terrified that if she asked, Lily would agree against her own wishes. After sitting for over an hour, she finally sighed and stood up to leave, defeated. She'd have to ask Robert if he had any ideas. She couldn't handle this little rascal on her own. Mom, stay for dinner, Lily said, following her to the door and fidgeting with her fingers. No, I can't. If I stay any longer, Emma will be calling me, wailing that she's starving. Emily sighed again. How was it that other people's daughters were so capable, while hers couldn't even make toast? Suddenly, she felt a surge of pride in her son. If you can't beat them, marry them. Emily smiled and waved. I'm off. After finally seeing her out, Lucas tossed his laptop aside and rubbed his aching arms. He hadn't dared to move a muscle, trying to look as busy as possible. The thought of how long he'd have to keep playing these games of psychological warfare with his mother made his future look bleak. Is there anything you want to eat? I'll go make it for you, Lily said, coming up behind him and massaging his shoulders. Lucas glanced at the time. It was only a little after 4 in the afternoon. It's not dinner time yet. They'd had lunch around noon. But I'm hungry, she said, her voice small and plaintive. Huh, well, then let's make dinner. I'll eat anything. As long as you're the one making it, I'll love it. Her pitiful expression made him laugh. Anyone else would think he was actually mistreating her. Lily went into the kitchen. Hearing the click of the gas stove, Lucas stretched out on the sofa and looked out the window. The sky was beginning to darken, a fiery sunset stretching across the horizon, painting the clouds in brilliant shades of red. This goofy girl had good taste. The view of Puget Sound from the floor-to-ceiling windows was worth every penny. Just as he was basking in the peaceful moment, a thought shot through his mind like a bolt of lightning. He scrambled off the sofa, not even bothering with his slippers, and rushed into the kitchen. Lily was there, wearing an apron, her hair tied back in a practical ponytail. She looked the very picture of domestic grace. Your period. It hasn't come yet, has it? For once, he had no desire to tease her. He got straight to the point. Lily counted on her fingers, then nodded slowly. I think it's a few days late. She turned back to the stove as if it were nothing, but Lucas was already sweating. Oh God, no way. Lily wasn't worried because, for most women, an irregular period was a regular occurrence. It could be delayed by a cold, illness, medication, even by being too happy or too sad. So a few days' delay didn't register as anything significant. But Lucas was different. Lucas had a guilty conscience. After all, he was the one who had suggested they skip the bubble gum on their wedding night. His heart hammered against his ribs, his voice trembling slightly. Lily, you're not pregnant, are you? Huh? Lily's cooking motions stopped abruptly. She turned and stared at him, stunned. The events of their wedding night came flooding back, and a wave of anxiety washed over her. Lucas turned off the stove and led her to the sofa. It's okay, don't panic. It's just a guess. He wasn't some ancient physician from period drama who could diagnose a pregnancy by taking her pulse. To be honest, he still had no idea how that was even supposed to work. Seeing his ragged breathing, Lily said softly, "You seem pretty nervous yourself." Me? Don't be ridiculous. What do I have to be nervous about? In reality, Lucas's palms were slick with sweat, but he couldn't show it. That would only make Lily more scared. Jumping to conclusions and then looking for evidence was a dangerous game. Suddenly, everything seems to fit, and you just spiral. He didn't want to torture himself any longer. He stood up. I'm going to buy a test. We'll know for sure. With that, he walked out the door. Lily sat there, wringing her hands when the door opened again. What's wrong? She asked, walking to the entryway. Forgot to change my shoes. Did you forget your phone too? Lily glanced at the coffee table. Lucas patted his pockets. Apparently. The door closed again. Lily noticed something on the shoe cabinet, took a closer look, and quickly opened the door, chasing after him. You forgot your keys this time. 20 minutes later, Lucas returned, panting, a white plastic bag in his hand. Through the thin plastic, she could see several small boxes. Worried about user error or false negatives, he had bought several. They huddled together on the sofa, trying to decipher the instructions for the strange device. How does it work? Lucas asked, still out of breath. Let me see the instructions. He'd always considered himself mentally tough, but this was a shock he still hadn't recovered from. But you haven't even gained any weight. Lucas mused. Could it really happen that fast? We only skipped it that one night. And that time at your parents' house over the holidays. Lily mumbled, her face turning crimson. That time, she had been the one to initiate. I'm never drinking again. Are you scared, silly? You had your period after that, Lucas said, amused. This girl's skin was so thin. They were married, and she still blushed at the drop of a hat. If it were from back then, you'd be showing by now. All right. Lily fell silent, focusing on the instructions again. I can help you if you want. No, she said, flatly refusing. She snatched the box and hurried into the bathroom. An eternity seemed to pass before Lily finally emerged, holding the small plastic stick. Lucas felt like he'd aged years. A glance at the clock showed it had only been a few minutes. Well, he asked anxiously. You look. Lucas took the test, which was wrapped in a tissue, and peered at it. There was a single line next to the letter C. As far as he knew, C was the control line. As long as the test wasn't broken, it would turn red. If the T line was blank, it was negative. No problem. Just as he breathed a sigh of relief, a faint, almost invisible line began to appear next to the T. It gradually darkened until it was as thick as the first, only slightly lighter in color. 2 lines. Okay. This is how we're playing it? I've only been married for a month. Is that? Lily's soft voice trembled beside him. It's positive. The moment the words left his mouth, she gripped his right hand tightly. What do we do? Her eyes glistened with tears, and her lips quivered. Lucas, who had been a nervous wreck moments before, couldn't help but smile at her reaction. He squeezed her soft hand. We're married, Lily. Why are you so scared? So it's positive. It's not like he was going to run for the hills. What we do? Silly girl. She looked at him with teary eyes. I wasn't thinking that night, but I'm worried you're not ready. Your company is at such a critical stage, and you'll have to juggle both. It sounds so exhausting. Lucas was floored. Even after all this time together, her tenderness still managed to surprise him. Do you want it? He asked softly. I do. Lily had been about to say it was up to him, but as she looked down at her flat stomach, she decided to tell the truth. Then don't worry about anything else, Lucas said with a smile. I want it too. I just wasn't expecting it, that's all. He wasn't against the idea, but who the hell would have thought it would happen so soon? They hadn't even taken down the wedding decorations yet. They ate dinner in a daze. Afterwards, Lucas had her take another test. The result was the same. 2 lines, one dark, one faint. Lucas sat on the sofa, his expression still a complex mix of emotions, but a small smile had unknowingly crept onto his face. "Lucas, I'm going to be a mom," Lily said, her voice filled with a solemn wonder that was neither purely joyous nor entirely nervous. Hearing her say it, Lucas felt a sense of unreality wash over him. He unbuttoned the top of her pajamas and gently placed his hand on her smooth, flat stomach. He leaned in, listening, but heard nothing but the normal gurgling of her insides. He had half expected to hear the legendary fetal kick. His only experience with fatherhood came from television dramas. He settled for placing a gentle kiss on her belly, then looked up. "How are you feeling? Any discomfort?" Lily shook her head, dazed. "Nothing at all? Dizziness, fatigue, nausea?" He remembered how, in the movies, the girlfriend would always get into a fight with the boyfriend, then suddenly cover her mouth and run to the bathroom, only to discover she was pregnant. But this goofball wasn't nauseous at all. Lily thought for a long moment, then tilted her head. "I feel kind of full." Lucas was speechless. Life is like a train you've never ridden before. You never know what scenery awaits you at the next stop. It didn't take long for Lucas to fully accept their new reality. He gave a wry smile, his gaze dropping. "I just feel like I've done you a disservice," he said, his voice laced with guilt. "You're still so young." Lily blinked, her right hand still resting on her stomach. "But I love it. But the world is so big. There are deserts so vast you can't see the end, where you can actually see a sky full of stars at night. There are pyramids with stones taller than a person, lakes that are like mirrors. You love the ocean, don't you? There are places where the sea glows in the dark. I haven't taken you to see any of that. And now you'll be at home with the baby." To his surprise, Lily just listened quietly, then broke into a smile. "But I'm not ambitious." Now, it was Lucas's turn to be stunned. "All I've ever wanted in my life is to build a good life with you," Lily continued. "Lucas, think about what my life was like 3 years ago. Every single day with you feels like a dream." She leaned forward and gently rested her forehead against his, her voice soft but earnest. "So I don't care about any of those things you mentioned. I just want to be with you. Only with you." Lily didn't understand why this man always felt like he wasn't doing enough. When she'd wanted to see mountains, Lucas, the laziest person she knew, had taken her to the foot of Mount Rainier the very next day. When she'd wanted to see the ocean, he'd taken her for a wedding photo shoot on the very coast she'd dreamed of her whole life, personally capturing the most beautiful, happiest moments of her existence. Whenever she looked at those photos, her heart still skipped a beat. And yet, he still foolishly thought she wasn't happy enough. He wasn't very bright sometimes. "Why aren't you eating at the table?" Emily asked, watching Emma grab her bowl and flee. "I haven't finished my game," Emma called back, disappearing into her room and shutting the door. It wasn't about the game. It was about her mom's bad mood. Her brother started the fire and then ran off, but she was stuck here. She didn't dare eat at the table, where any little thing could set off a lecture. Living with a queen is like living with a tiger. The more Emily thought about it, the angrier she got. She glared at Robert. "Look at your son. And your daughter." Robert chuckled. Usually it was your son. Now his daughter was his responsibility too. All right. Lucas just isn't in a hurry to have kids. At least he didn't make you pressure him to get married. Look at Brenda downstairs. She's been trying to set her son up on dates for years. That's a real headache. Forget your colleagues and all of your acquaintances. Is there a single daughter-in-law who is sweeter or prettier than Lily? Thinking about it that way, Emily felt a little better, but she still couldn't help but say, "But I just want to hold my grandbaby." She scooted closer to Robert. "Honey, think of something. That little rascal isn't afraid of spanking anymore. You're the only one in this family who can handle him. We also have to consider what our in-laws think. If we push, it'll look like we're bullying their daughter. Our in-law is even more anxious than I am. She was supposed to come with me to Lucas's place this afternoon, but she got cold feet at the last minute. That's why I went alone." Fine. Robert waved a hand dismissively, already trying to concoct a master plan that would compel Lucas to make a small sacrifice for the sake of family harmony. It was ridiculous. 2 old women with nothing better to do than dream about playing with grandkids. They had too much time on their hands. Just then his phone rang. Emily picked it up. "It's our son." "Hello? What is it?" she said gruffly, putting the call on speaker for Robert to hear, her eyes saying, See how aggravating your son is." "Mom, Lily's pregnant," Lucas said, his voice serious. Emily and Robert exchanged stunned glances. "Lucas Carter, are you messing with me just because I'm too old to punish you anymore?" Emily's voice was tinged with a wounded pride. Ever since the wedding, Lucas had deflected every one of her attempts to bring up the topic of babies. She just returned from his place, utterly defeated, and now he was pulling this? Why would I lie about something like this? We used 2 different pregnancy tests. Both showed 2 lines. But she's not having morning sickness. In fact, her appetite has gotten bigger. Is that normal? For once, Lucas sounded uncertain, none of his usual confidence in his voice. I'm planning to take her to the hospital tomorrow for a checkup. I'm just really nervous. Morning sickness is different for everyone. The baby is still too small to see much now. Wait a few more weeks. Let's say the end of the month. Take Lily for an ultrasound then, Robert advised from the side. Emily hung up the phone, still looking completely dazed. A few seconds later, she abandoned her dinner and rushed toward their bedroom. Where are you going? I'm looking for your copy of Shakespeare and that book of classic poetry. We need to start thinking of names for Lucas. Isn't it a bit early? She just got pregnant. There's still 9 months to go. Robert scoffed, then picked up his own phone and started tapping out a message to a group chat with several professors from the university's English department. Gentlemen, I require your assistance. I need some beautiful names for both a boy and a girl. Do you think it's a boy or a girl? Lily asked, leaning her head on Lucas's shoulder. How would I know? Either one would be great. If it was a girl, she'd surely take after her mother, cute from the day she was born. The thought alone made his heart melt. If it was a boy, well, at least a boy could be sent out into the world to pursue other people's precious daughters. It was a win-win. While he spoke, Lucas was still scrolling through his laptop, reading up on pregnancy. He learned that the 10 months thing wasn't quite accurate. Medically, it was calculated in weeks, about 40 of them, or 280 days. That was about 9 months. Sooner than he thought. He stayed up reading until 10. Lily, as usual, got sleepy right on time. Lucas tucked her into bed, then snuck back out to the living room. He sat there for half the night, staring at the pregnancy test on the coffee table. Once the initial shock and panic had subsided, all that was left was happiness. A dreamlike joy, coupled with a mountain of pressure and responsibility, washed over him in waves, like the sun and moon taking turns in the sky. One moment he'd be grinning like an idiot, the next he'd feel the weight of it all, struggling to breathe. He had a lot to think about. The next morning, a delivery arrived for Lily. Boxes and boxes of stuff. Just carrying them inside wore Lucas out. What did you buy? He asked. An easel, paints, canvases. Lily said, pulling a brand new tablet out of box. And this, for digital art. It was an expensive tablet, one that had been sitting in her online shopping cart for almost a year. She wouldn't have bought it if she hadn't been thinking about how uncomfortable it would be to sit hunched over a desk in the coming months. Lucas was impressed. A few illustrations were no longer enough for his wife. She wanted to create everything. There was something unexpectedly alluring about her artistic dedication. I'll move everything into the study. We can turn it into your art studio. The girl tapped her chin thoughtfully, then smiled. I'll help. Don't you move. Lucas gently pushed her back onto the sofa, but Vanessa said, I need to get more exercise. Then I'll go for a walk with you later. Just don't do any heavy lifting. Seeing her sitting there, blinking innocently, Lucas wasn't about to let her lift a finger. Pregnant was pregnant, even if she felt fine. Still, wasn't she taking this a little too well? Lucas had been happily assuming that his goofy girl had gotten lucky and would escape morning sickness. He discovered they just found out too early. By the end of the month, Lily was making frequent trips to the bathroom. Forget sleeping. Sometimes she was too nauseous to even eat. Yet, she was hungry all the time. Lucas knew Lily would never agree to hire a housekeeper, so he went over to Jason's and learned how to make several simple, light dishes from their cook. When Lily emerged from the bathroom, he rushed over. Are you okay? I'm fine, she said with a faint smile, then sank wearily onto the sofa, leaning into his arms. Lucas thought for a moment. It was the end of the month. He decided to take her to the hospital. I don't want to go to the hospital. Lily's aversion to hospitals hadn't changed, and pregnancy had somehow made her even more prone to whining. She flat out refused to go. This isn't because you're sick. Lucas practically had to drag her there. Robert had plenty of friends at the hospital and had called ahead for them, so the whole process was quick and smooth. After the ultrasound, the doctor studied the report with a grim expression, which sent Lucas into a panic. How is it? He asked, his voice tight. The doctor's eyebrows shot up. Everything's fine. The mother is a bit frail, but both she and the baby look perfectly healthy. But she's hungry all the time. My friend's wife wasn't like this when she was pregnant. A bigger appetite is also normal. After all, your wife is responsible for providing nutrition for 3 people. If she's nauseous, have her eat smaller, more frequent meals. Lucas was so nervous his brain wasn't processing. The doctor gave him a wry look. She tapped the ultrasound report on her desk, then held up 2 fingers and wiggled them gently. Two. Even in his nervous state, Lucas understood that. A slow smile spread across his face. After a moment's hesitation, he decided not to ask the gender. He knew there were rules, but some doctors would drop subtle hints. If you asked if it was a boy and the doctor said, a boy or a girl, they're all wonderful, it was almost certainly a girl. Sometimes they'd say the baby looked handsome or beautiful. It was all about reading between the lines. He closed the door behind him and saw Lily sitting on a bench in the hallway, anxiously fiddling with her fingers. She hadn't dared to come in. The doctor said there are two of them, he whispered, sitting down beside her and leaning close to her ear. Lily's hand stilled. She turned to him, her eyes wide with surprise. We're so lucky. Lucas gave a dry laugh. Lucky? Yeah, he supposed they were. It was strange. It was as if their roles had been reversed. He was constantly worried about her, thinking how difficult it would be to carry two babies. But Lily, the one who would have to go through it, wasn't worried at all. A small, serene smile graced her lips. Are they identical or fraternal? I don't know. I didn't ask. Lucas laced his fingers with hers. If they're identical, then I'm the amazing one. If they're fraternal, it's all thanks to you. But you'll start showing much faster with twins. It's going to be really hard on you. All the books and articles he'd been devouring were paying off. He was becoming an expert. Lily just blinked at him. She finally understood how Lucas seemed to know a little bit about everything. When he told her that long ago, she thought he was just teasing. In the past month, he must have read dozens of books. He read while she drew. He researched while she played games. A month ago, they were like headless chickens. Now, she could just ask him anything. It was incredibly reassuring. It feels like a dream. Lucas helped her to her feet, and she gently cradled her belly as she spoke. Thinking back to her life before she met Lucas felt distant and hazy, like a long nightmare. Back then, she had imagined her future, all sorts of possibilities, good and bad. The best-case scenario she could dream of was making enough money for her mom to walk again. She never, ever imagined she could be this happy. You said the same thing when we first got together, Lucas teased as he backed the car out. Now we're having kids, and you're still saying it. Don't mention the twins to my mom, just yet. These two might save me from a beating one day. We're not going home. The Queen Mother has issued a royal decree. I am to bring you for a report immediately after your checkup. He paused. Your mom is there too. Her very first prenatal appointment. And it was a state affair. Lucas figured Lily was now more precious than a panda, the highest-ranking member of the entire extended family. As for him, his rank was equal to the total number of people in the house. And once the babies were born, his status would drop another 2 spots. Only Emma could compete with him for last place. It was daunting. When they arrived at his parents' house, the 3 elders were, as expected, chatting in the living room. The moment they walked in, the conversation stopped, and all eyes turned to them. Lily, where did the checkup go? Emily asked. Great, just great. Mom and babies are both very healthy, Lucas said breezily, helping Lily to the sofa. Her belly was only just beginning to show, and she shot him a look, silently telling him to let go. But Lucas didn't dare. He was a panda keeper now. If he didn't perform his duties perfectly, he'd be reprimanded. The elders seemed pleased with his attentiveness. Emily and Sophia pulled Lily over to chat, leaving the 2 men as outsiders, staring awkwardly at each other. After a long silence, Robert pulled an old game console out of a drawer, breaking the tension. Lucas recognized it immediately, an old NES, a real antique. Where did you dig this up, he asked. You can find anything online these days. Robert fiddled with the cables and plugged it into the TV. Miraculously, it worked. Come on, play with me. Why are you using a cheat code for Contra? Robert complained, exasperated. He'd completely forgotten about it, but Lucas had immediately entered the code for 30 lives. If you don't like it, don't ask to borrow one of my lives later. Robert glanced at his son, who had been unusually quiet and somber. You don't seem very happy for a new father. I thought you'd be bragging to everyone. Calling up their cousins to ask if they were married, yet seemed more like his son's style. I am happy. It's just, I feel a little bad for her, Lucas said, his eyes glued to the screen. I keep thinking, she's still just a kid herself. Lily doesn't want them. Robert almost laughed. Lucas was talking as if he were an old man, not a 23-year-old. No, I think she does. Lucas looked over his shoulder. Lily was chatting happily with Emily and Sophia. She looked perfectly content. Robert came to a deadpan conclusion. Then you've just trapped yourself in a corner, trying to decide what's best for her. Lucas paused. He had, hadn't he? Lily, I think this is great. I'm willing. Him, I don't care what you think. I care what I think. Your mother was younger than Lily when she was pregnant with you. Have you ever seen her unhappy a day in your life? Robert gestured toward the sofa with his chin. Instead of worrying about all that nonsense, why don't you think about how to make your wife happy? Lucas blinked. Dad, you could be a real jerk sometimes, you know that? Don't blame me. It was your mother who. Robert caught himself mid-sentence. That was one battle he could never, ever win. If he did, Emily would kill him. The two men fell silent again. This time, they could hear the conversation from the sofa. Kids are the most fun when they don't know any better. When Lucas was about to start kindergarten, he went to bed and was too embarrassed to say anything. He tried to dry the sheets by hiding them under the covers. I thought he was sleeping in so late, but when I pulled back the blanket, I found out what he'd done. Mom, you can't tell that story. Lucas cried out. He saw Lily looking at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of amusement and pity, and he wanted to die. That was the one secret he never wanted his wife to know, especially since he was always teasing her for being a dork. Sophia chuckled, patting Lily's hand. All kids are like that. Lucas was actually pretty well behaved. Lily was even crazier. One time Mom, I'm having twins, Lily announced, her clear, beautiful eyes wide with sincerity. Twins! Emily and Sophia exclaimed in unison. Lily fidgeted with her fingers, a blush creeping up her cheeks as she nodded. Lucas was stunned. His get-out-of-jail-free card had just been played. He looked at Lily, who pouted back at him, her eyes full of innocence. It wasn't her fault. If she let her mom continue, she and her two babies would have to run away from home tomorrow. After everyone had left and the house was quiet again, Emily rubbed her cheeks, sore from laughing so much. You know, she said thoughtfully, do you feel like her son has gotten sillier? He was still a pain, but he seemed more like a kid now. Before, he'd always had a maturity that seemed beyond his years. And he smiled a lot more. What are you talking about? People don't get sillier. He's just not overthinking things as much, Robert said, giving her a look. What does that mean? Your daughter-in-law spoils him. He's happy all the time now. Isn't that a good thing? Robert was still tinkering with his antique game console. You think it's just Lucas spoiling Lily? She's been spoiling him right back. He looked up. They say a comfortable life is an anesthetic. People act like kids when they're happy. Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she picked up a slice of apple and fed it to Robert, a soft smile on her face. Well then, I suppose I have you to thank for spoiling me all these years. Robert raised an eyebrow. The pleasure is all mine. Back at their apartment, there wasn't much to do. Since finding out about the pregnancy, Lucas had been spending less time at the office. Lily's classes were winding down, and she barely had to go to campus anymore. Once finals were over, she'd basically be done with school. As for her senior year internship credit, her husband owned a company. That was the last thing she needed to worry about. Lily sat on the sofa, contemplating. Between painting and resting, she chose to take her babies on a campaign through the Summoner's Rift. If she wanted to play games or paint, she had to do it now. If Emily or Sophia came over, they'd surely start talking about radiation from electronic devices. Lucas couldn't help but smile as he watched her tiptoe over to the computer like a thief. If our moms come over, remember to shut it down quick. Okay. Watching Lily play so happily, Lucas suddenly felt like a royal tutor in ancient times. The prince could be late and make mistakes without fear of punishment from the teacher. It was the tutor who got punished, until the prince couldn't bear to watch anymore and promised not to be late again. After arranging a few things for work, Lucas pulled a chair over and sat beside her, gently stroking her belly. The thought that their babies were in there, and that in just over half a year they would be in this world, filled him with an irrepressible joy. I wish we'd known each other as kids, Lily murmured mid-game. Emily's stories were still on her mind. If only I could have grown up with Lucas, I could have been there to see it all. Not necessarily, Lucas said without looking up. Everything that happened in the past made us who we are today. In a way, everything is exactly as it should be. Lily thought about it and nodded in agreement. Have you thought of any names for the babies? She asked, her gaze fixed on the black and white respawn screen as she absently rubbed her stomach. Lillipad 1 and Lillipad 2. If you give them names like that, the babies will be sad. Aren't you afraid they'll unplug your life support when they're older? Lily said, her face a mock serious mask. Lucas chuckled. Then you can name them. Okay. Lily nodded eagerly, suddenly remembering that her husband was the same man who couldn't even be bothered to name his own company. This task definitely couldn't be left to him. Seeing her nittily respawn in the fountain, she quickly patted Lucas's hand. Honey, quick, help me time her flashes. I can't keep track. Lucas tilted his head in confusion. This is how you use a husband. The next morning, Lily dragged Lucas out for a run. He had thought that moving would finally end his suffering. But no, the morning runs continued. If anything, it was more convenient now. Before, they had to go to a nearby park. Now, They could just run along the waterfront. The view was much better, but Lucas was in no mood to appreciate it. "Lily, isn't that enough?" he asked, stopping to catch his breath. Lily trotted up behind him. All right. It's 7:40 now. We ran for another 10 minutes. Lucas was furious. The little dork had pretended not to check the time again to trick him into running longer. He was sure that if he hadn't asked, she wouldn't have said a word. Before she was pregnant, he at least got some compensation at night. Now, it was pure torture. "I wasn't looking at the time. I forgot," she said, pouting, her eyes wide with innocence. Lillipad couldn't possibly have any bad intentions. She's just a normal girl who cares about her husband's health. Lucas didn't say a word. He just took her hand and started walking home. After a few steps, she stopped pulling. He turned to see her blinking at him pleadingly. Could you walk a couple more laps with me? We've been running this whole time, and now you want to walk?" "Well, I am pregnant. I need to exercise," she said, her expression both cute and serious. "It's for our babies." Lucas silently repeated to himself, "She's pregnant. Don't argue with her." He forced a smile. "Fine, let's walk." They had only gone a few steps when they saw Jason and Vanessa running toward them from the other direction. Vanessa was actually holding a stick, herding Jason along like a sheep. So she hadn't been joking that day. Lucas suddenly felt a surge of gratitude. At least Lily only used her wits or her charm to get him to run a little extra. Seeing them, Vanessa stopped herding and pulled Lily down to sit on a bench, telling Jason to keep running on his own. Well, if it isn't the father-to-be. "How are you feeling?" Jason said with a wicked grin, jogging in place beside Lucas. Lucas pursed his lips. "It's complicated. Ha, loser. Weren't you the one saying you'd wait until you were 25 or 26? Jason's laughter echoed along the waterfront. "Got careless, didn't you?" Vanessa watched Jason's smug display with disdain, the pot calling the kettle black. When it came to this particular topic, who was he to mock anyone? Was there anyone else on Earth who had poked holes in his own condoms and then fallen into his own trap? She snorted and turned back to chat with Lily. Jason had expected a witty comeback from Lucas, but instead, his friend let out a deep, heavy sigh. It was a sigh filled with genuine sorrow. Jason froze. This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. "Hey man, I was just kidding. It's not that bad, is it?" His tone immediately softened. "Having a kid is actually great. Look at me. I was clueless at first, but now every time I see my daughter, my heart just melts. You should come over and see Claire later. She's growing so fast. She's so cute." Lucas waved a hand, cutting him off. "That's not what I'm worried about." "Then what are you sighing for?" "I'm worried about having two at once. I don't know if I can handle it," Lucas said glumly. Jason stared at him. Lucas thought, "I wasn't even going to say anything, but you just had to come over and gloat. I mean, what if they're both girls? I'll worry myself to death when they grow up." "Dream on. There'll be two boys," Jason retorted. "Be honest, in your entire life, have you ever gotten lucky, whether it's in a gotcha game or teamfight tactics?" His luck was abysmal. Jason remembered one semester when they were all obsessed with TFT, and Lucas hadn't managed to get a single 3-star 5-cost unit the entire season. Ryan Brooks had managed to get a whole board of them in one game. And this guy thought he was going to have 2 daughters? Impossible. 2 boys would be fine too, Lucas said, a sly smile playing on his lips. "But I only have." Jason stopped, a horrible suspicion dawning on him. Had Lucas just manipulated him? He knew Lucas was just joking about his sons pursuing his daughter, but his first reaction to Lucas's words had been that he only had 1 daughter to give. Damn it. Across the path, Vanessa was mid-sentence when she suddenly shot to her feet. "What's wrong?" Lily asked. "He's about to throw your husband into the sound." It's strange how, when 2 people spend enough time together, their minds start to work in similar ways. Lily's first thought was, "It's fine, my husband can swim." 2 seconds later, she shook her head and scrambled to her feet. She saw the 2 married men shoving each other like children, just as Vanessa yelled, "Jason Miller, you're a father. Stop acting like a child." Jason flinched but kept a smirk on his face as he looked at Lucas. "Have you learned your lesson?" Whatever punishment awaited him at home was a problem for later. If he backed down now, he'd be labeled henpecked for the rest of his life. No, he wouldn't back down. That would just be prudent. "If you push any harder, we're both going in," Lucas said, his grip firm on Jason's wrist. He wasn't worried at all. In fact, his smile widened. "I'll just have to go home and take a shower. But will a certain someone have to go home and kneel on a keyboard?" "I'm only letting you go because we're brothers, you understand?" Jason said through gritted teeth, finally backing off. "Look at you getting so worked up. Claire can't even crawl yet, and you're already a nervous wreck. You'll be the same way when you have a daughter." Seeing the 2 men had finally calmed down, Vanessa turned back to Lily. Are you still feeling nauseous all the time? Lily nodded. She was about to speak, but quickly took a few sips of water first before letting out a long breath. Vanessa stared at her. Maybe it was because she was healthier than most men, but she felt like Lily's symptoms were much more severe than hers had been. I probably won't be working for the next few months. Why don't I have my housekeeper come over to your place? Oh no, it's okay. Lucas can cook. Vanessa was silent. Right? The perfect husband. The morning sun had risen, its rays warm on their faces. Lucas gazed at the sparkling water. I'm not going to the office for a while, he announced. Jason glanced over. Lily was barely showing. Isn't it a little early for that? Lucas shook his head with a sigh. Lily can't keep anything down, but she's always hungry. I need to be home so I can cook for her whenever she needs it. All right, I was busy with family stuff all last year. Consider this me paying you back. Besides, there's nothing going on at the company right now besides R&D. Lucas pulled out his phone and dialed Leo's number. Anything you're not good at, just delegate to Leo. I've been training him. The phone rang for a few seconds, then went to voicemail. Where the hell is that guy? He looked up and saw Jason grinning. You haven't been to the office lately, so you don't know, Jason said, already chuckling. His parents have been trying to set him up on dates since the holidays. He's been ignoring them, but a few days ago, they showed up at the office to ambush him. He got so scared he's been in hiding ever since. He won't even come to work. He's not even a graduate yet. The guy's making 6 figures a month now. His parents don't have to worry about his finances, so of course they're going to start pushing for marriage. Jason shrugged. It seemed like most older people thought marriage and kids should happen as early as possible. When I was your age, I already had kids. You have it so much better than we did. What are you waiting for? But times had changed. Leo, however, didn't seem to have any of those pressures. He probably just preferred fictional characters. He was just one step away from being a full-blown otaku. That guy's a lost cause, Jason concluded. It's all because of that one game he plays. Lucas disagreed. Leo likes someone. That's why he's not interested in anyone else. No way, really? So Lucas told him everything Leo had said. I envy you guys with your fancy words. Living so freely. He doesn't have a crush on Emma, does he? He wouldn't dare. Lucas couldn't fathom how Jason's mind had jumped to Emma. If he tried anything with my sister, I'd break his legs. Well, who else? No way. Jason was about to say the name when Lucas clamped a hand over his mouth. Just keep it to yourself. It's not like Leo is actively pursuing her anyway. They barely even interact, Jason said, confused. That's the point. She's the one who's never going to date anyone. Though Lucas had no idea why. After their run, Lucas had wanted to go see his goddaughter, but seeing the defensive look in Jason's eyes, he just laughed and took Lily's hand, heading home. All of Lily's art supplies had arrived, so Lucas started transforming the study into a proper studio. He moved furniture and even changed the overhead light fixture, a crucial detail to ensure she wouldn't be working in her own shadow at night. As he helped set up his wife's new creative space, Lucas felt like he was playing one of those life simulation games he loved. Arrange the furniture, place your wife inside, and then spend all day obsessing over her. It was exactly the same, except he didn't have to tap on a screen. He could just pet her in person. Lily was like a slightly larger version of Dottie, always cuddling up to him and rubbing her face against him. Dottie, seeing her personal bedroom being renovated, didn't seem to mind. She curiously circled the wooden easel, trying to figure out if it was climbable. Just as she was about to leap, Lily scooped her up. The cat froze, its limbs tucked in, not daring to move. It could smell that this two-legged creature was about to have a kitten of her own. That little two-legger is so lucky. It won't have to scavenge for food as soon as it can walk like I did, and it will have me, the head of the household, to protect it. Lucas finished with the light and saw Lily holding Dottie, a sad look on her face. What are you thinking about? He asked. Dottie was truly Lily's cat. Mouth slightly agape, eyes glazed over. Even the way they zoned out was identical. Do you think? Will we get parents? The girl asked in a small voice. After the initial excitement had worn off, this new worry had crept in. Her own childhood had been so unusual. She hadn't learned much from her parents about raising children. Lucas hopped down from the stepladder, unconcerned. Making them academic superstars or geniuses in some field. That would be tough. But just teaching them not to be bad people? That's easy. Whether you believe people are inherently good or evil, it's their environment that shapes them. Children are mirrors of their parents. You can tell a lot about a parent by how their child behaves. On a train, for instance, some kids run around screaming profanities, while others sit quietly. It's like they're two different species. Lily looked down, gently stroking her belly. I just want them to be kind people. Whether they were smart or successful didn't matter, as long as they weren't bad. I didn't know you had such low expectations for your children. Lily looked up and smiled at him. Well, I'm not that smart, and I'm still very happy. Lucas felt a jolt. Was it because she was really becoming a mother? He felt like she had matured overnight. That's because you have a good husband. MHM, thank you. Lily stood on her tiptoes and gave him a quick peck on the cheek. I thought you were going to argue with me on that. Lucas turned away, scratching his cheek as he carried the ladder out of the room. After lunch, Lucas finally got a hold of Leo and went to see him in person. Some work matters were best discussed face-to-face. The moment Lucas left, Aaron arrived. Let me see how big my daughter is. Lily blinked. Don't say that. She chided softly. These were her babies. Besides, they didn't even know if they were boys or girls yet. Aaron winked. Didn't you say I could be their godmother? That makes them your goddaughters. Fine, don't be so possessive. Aaron grinned, revealing her canine teeth as she reached out to touch Lily's stomach. What have you been up to? Just painting. Lily led her into the new studio and picked up her brush to continue working on canvas. It was a painting of the sunrise they had watched over the ocean in Hawaii. Aaron looked at it closely, stunned. There was a real difference when someone with natural talent painted. But her attention was quickly drawn back to the pregnant woman beside her. Lily was wearing a white satin slip dress with a delicate lace hem. With a paintbrush in hand and a few stray strands of hair framing her face, she looked ethereal, the picture of serene concentration. Aaron let out a low whistle. Marriage looks good on you. You're even prettier than before. Why? Lily asked, looking up from her work. Aaron leaned in with a mischievous grin, making a loud slurping sound. Because now, Lily, you're a wife. She dragged out the word, her tone full of innuendo. Lily's ears turned crimson. She tucked the loose strands of hair behind her ear and took a step back. If you keep talking like that, you'll never find a boyfriend. Never planned on looking for one. Aaron grabbed an unused canvas and set it up on a nearby easel. I want to try this too. After years of drawing illustrations and sketches, I've never actually painted. Are you still planning on being alone forever? I can't hang out with you as much now, and who knows how long it will be before I can again. Lily couldn't make any promises. Once the babies were born, her time would be theirs, and Aaron wasn't as outgoing as she seemed. She was friendly with everyone, but she didn't consider many people her friends. Lily suddenly realized that many of the people around her were like that. She was the simple one, thinking anyone who was nice to her was a good person. Aaron's hand paused. She rinsed her brush in a jar of water and snorted. Have you ever seen me unhappy? But you'd be even happier with someone you love. Won't you just try? It was a conversation they had had countless times. Aaron's lips curved into a smile. But Lily, I have a congenital heart condition. She said it casually, as if talking about the weather, as she continued to paint. What if I'm in my 50s and something happens? What would that person do? She paused, a wicked glint in her eye. Of course, if that happened, I'd be dead, so I couldn't stop him from marrying 10 other women. I could haunt his dreams, though. Her smile faded, but her gaze remained gentle. But what if? What if he decided to be alone for the rest of his life? Lily bit her lip silent. 10 years, 20 years. It's a lot longer than we think. So even if he were willing to accept that risk, I couldn't. It's better to just be alone from the start. The studio fell silent. The only sound the gentle scratch of brush on canvas. Aaron's brush moved across the white surface, quickly creating a golden beach. But didn't you have surgery? Lily asked, twisting her fingers. It's mostly fixed, but I'm scared. Back then, it really felt like I was just one step away from dying. What if it happens again? Aaron's cheerful mask slipped back on. Besides, I'm happy every day. Why would I want to find someone to annoy me? What if I found someone who leaves his socks everywhere? God, I'm already getting angry just thinking about it. Suddenly, she had a violent urge to murder this imaginary, faceless man. She was about to ask Lily for some paint when she noticed a single tear clinging to her friend's chin. You're pregnant, you can't cry. Aaron panicked. If Lucas saw this, he'd bury her in a shallow grave. In all the years she'd known her, she had never seen Lily cry over her own misfortunes. But she had cried for Aaron more times than she could count. Some people are just born with a gentle soul. They rejoice in your joy and ache with your sorrow. Having a friend like that was the luckiest thing that had ever happened to her. Lily quickly wiped her eyes, forcing the tears back. She was supposed to be comforting Aaron, not the other way around. Sniffling, she said slowly, seeing you smile makes me want to cry. Right. This dork wasn't always the most articulate. Good thing you know what you mean. Okay, stop crying. The doctor said with my luck, I could live to be 70, Aaron said, reaching to wipe Lily's tears, only to find she had already blinked them away. A mischievous smile spread across Aaron's face. Let's flip this around. If you were in my shoes, would you still be with Lucas? Lily was silent for a long time before answering seriously. I would, and I'd live every day like it was too. She said it because she knew Lucas's personality. No matter how much she might push him away, he would never let her go. Even if they didn't know whether tomorrow or tragedy would come first, they could be like the fireworks they'd watched that night. Even a single, brilliant moment was enough to remember for a lifetime. Aaron stared, a little dazed. The goofball had really changed over the past few years. It used to be her giving Lily all the pep talks, and now, somehow, the roles were reversed. They say pregnancy brain is real, that you lose a few IQ points for 3 years. But Lucas was starting to think his sweet goofball had somehow gotten sharper since getting pregnant. It was August, and Lily's due date was just over 100 days away. Outside, the midday sun beat down, baking waves of heat off the pavement. Inside their apartment, the curtains were drawn, leaving the living room in a cool, quiet dimness, the only sound the soft hum of the standing air conditioner. Lucas gathered the last of the dishes from the table, about to head for the kitchen, when Lily called out from the sofa. Just leave them in the sink to soak. I'll wash them later. A pregnant lady isn't washing any dishes, Lucas shot back without turning. You're too slow. It only takes me a couple of minutes. It's just washing dishes. Are you worried your husband is going to keel over from exhaustion? Of course not, she muttered, turning her head away with a defiant sniff. A smile tugged at Lucas's lips as he carried the last 2 plates to the kitchen. She was still as thoughtful as ever, just with a bit more of a stubborn streak. After taking his sweet time washing the dishes, he came out to find Lily watching a movie on the projector. Well, sitting wasn't quite the right word. She couldn't sit up straight anymore, so she was more or less reclining against a mountain of pillows. As the days passed, her baby bump had become impossible to miss, making everything from walking to sleeping an ordeal. She used to refuse his help, but now, if he didn't offer a hand, she'd stay put for half an hour, struggling to get up on her own. The movie was the classic zombie flick, I Am Legend. It was still near the beginning, where the main character is so lonely he starts talking to mannequins. Lucas always found that scene creepier than the actual zombies. You just kept waiting for one of them to move. He was wondering where Lily got the nerve to watch this when he saw her, trembling, clutching a pillow in front of her face, ready to block her view at a moment's notice. All passion, no skill. He didn't know if it was a girl thing. This need to watch terrifying movies despite having a ridiculously low tolerance for fear, only to come crying to you for comfort afterward. He snorted to himself, grabbed a Coke from the fridge, and took a long swig. Perfect. A $3 can of soda, and the first sip alone was worth $2.50. Lucas, I want an ice cream bar. Lily's plaintive voice drifted from the living room. One of the little fudge ones. One, that's it, Lucas called back. And if you have one today, that's it for the next 2 days. I know. Just please get it for me, she pleaded, puffing out her cheeks. She was carrying his baby, and she couldn't even eat what she wanted. She felt so sorry for herself. Lucas opened a freezer and then paused, an idea sparking. He deliberately counted the ice cream bars. You couldn't be too careful with a snack fiend in the house. Lily's cravings had intensified in her second trimester, and Lucas lived in constant fear of catching her sneaking out for barbecue or spicy food. While he did occasionally sneak her out for a decent meal behind his mom's back, the doctor had been clear. Not too often. 1, 2, 13, 14. One was missing. He'd counted them last night before bed. There were 15. Lily, he called out, a smirk playing on his lips. Why is there an ice cream bar missing from the freezer? Lily jumped, her eyes darting away, refusing to meet his. Huh, why you must have miscounted. Lucas patiently counted again. Nope, 14. One less than last night. Lily's jaw dropped. Who was this petty? She had carefully disposed of the evidence. It never occurred to her that he would actually keep a running tally. Seeing him still watching her, Lily put on a brave face. Then you must have counted wrong last night. You're sure you didn't sneak one? I've been so good, how could I? She mumbled, looking down and fiddling with her fingers, the very picture of a wrongfully accused victim. Lucas chuckled internally. See? She'd gotten smarter. That's so weird. I could have sworn I counted them several times, Lucas said, playing along. He paced in front of the fridge, stroking his chin dramatically. Then it must have been a burglar, a thief who went to all the trouble of picking our lock, burst in, opened the freezer, grabbed a single fudge bar, and ran. Lily bit her lip. Why wasn't he letting this go? Maybe it was Dottie, Lily said, heaving herself up. I'll go get her for questioning. She waddled into the art studio and returned with the cat, who had been enjoying a nap. Lucas leaned against the fridge, arms crossed, and watched the interrogation. All right, confess. Did you eat the ice cream bar? Meow. The gray cat's copper eyes were wide with confusion. See? Dottie admitted it, Lily declared, looking at Lucas with dead seriousness. Meow. Meow. Dottie thrashed her paws, refusing to take the fall. She'd seen the whole thing last night. This human, sneaking into the living room in the middle of the night, barefoot, so she wouldn't make a sound. If it weren't for the familiar scent, Dottie would have thought an intruder was in the house. The wooden stick was still floating in the toilet tank. Unfortunately, Lucas didn't speak cat. All he saw was a frantic, wailing furball. Honey, Dottie knows she was wrong. Please forgive her, Lily said, gently taking the cat's paw and waving it at him. Meow. Translation: fine, whatever makes you happy. Dottie's ears drooped, and with a final, mournful meow, she fell silent. All right, fine, Lucas said with a nod. He closed the freezer door. Lily pouted but didn't dare press her luck by asking again. Ice cream was off the table, but watermelon was still an option. Lucas headed to the kitchen to cut some for her. He had just raised the knife when Lily's voice echoed from the living room again. Lucas, come quick. Lucas felt like he flew out of the kitchen. He nearly lost his footing, skidding to a halt on the tile. What is it? Are you okay? Is something wrong? He asked, his heart hammering against his ribs. The girl shook her head, clutching a pillow tightly, her voice thick with tears. Can you just come sit with me? I'm scared. Lucas was speechless for a long moment. You know, there's a possibility we could, say, watch a different movie. But I already started it. I want to finish, Lily said, glancing at the floor-to-ceiling windows. Good thing we live on a high floor. Even if there were real zombies, they couldn't climb up here. Probably couldn't climb up here. It's all fake, Lucas said, forcing a smile as he sat down beside her. Zombies are biologically impossible. Their teeth would have all rotted out. What would they even bite you with? One must be patient with a pregnant woman, especially when said pregnant woman was the undisputed empress of the household. After a moment, Lucas leaned down and pressed his ear to Lily's belly, a goofy grin spreading across his face. He hadn't been able to hear anything before, but now the movements were distinct. He could almost feel a tiny foot pushing back against his cheek. He's kicking me, Lucas whispered, his voice full of wonder. Seeing his expression, Lily's lips curved into a gentle smile. She reached out and stroked his hair, her eyes softening. You can get them back when they're born. Little kids have short memories. They won't hold a grudge. I could never, she murmured. They chatted in low voices, a warm, peaceful feeling settling over them. Neither of them paid any attention to the zombies running amok on the screen anymore. Sometime later, the movie neared its climax. Just as the zombies burst into the main character's house, and Lucas was wondering which ending this version had, there was a soft knock at the door. Lily, who had been completely engrossed, jumped with a terrified squeak. Who is it? Who do you think? It's either your mom or my mom, Lucas said, patting her arm. Quick, turn off the projector. If my mom sees you watching a horror movie, we're both dead. Lily snapped back to reality, fumbling with the remote to shut off the movie. She arranged herself primly on the sofa, adopting the perfect posture of a responsible mother-to-be. Once Lucas confirmed the scene was clear, he went to open the door. This summer, Emily and Sophia had been taking turns dropping by, either to check in, bring over some soup, or occasionally cook a meal. As for Emma and Maya, Emily had issued a strict restraining order. They were not allowed in the apartment. Those two were just too chaotic. Emma had thrown a fit about it, but eventually had to accept her fate. He opened the door, and sure enough, it was Emily Carter, carrying a container that was undoubtedly filled with some kind of super healthy broth. It seemed to be a universal mother-in-law thing. Where's Lily? Resting on the sofa. You're not at the office all day. You should take her out for walks more often. Okay, Lucas agreed, not daring to argue. Emily walked into the living room and took a closer look at Lily, noticing that her eyes were red and welling up with tears. Lily, honey, what's wrong? Why are you crying? She asked, rushing to her side. Lily froze, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. She hadn't even realized. She couldn't very well admit she'd been terrified by a movie. That would earn her an endless lecture. You're pregnant. You can't watch things like that. It's bad for the baby. She needed another excuse. Fast. After a moment of frantic thought, she gave up on thinking. But she did come to one clear conclusion. She was terrible at this. She shot a desperate, pleading look at Lucas, hoping her all-powerful husband could bail her out. That was a mistake. As soon as Emily saw Lily's red-rimmed eyes and trembling lip as she glanced at Lucas, she pieced it all together. This sweet girl had obviously been bullied by Lucas, and he'd probably forbidden her from telling on him. Her fists clenched. She would find an opportunity to throttle him later. At that moment, Lucas returned from the kitchen with a bowl of the soup his mother had brought, placing it carefully on the coffee table. My colleagues were telling me that when their daughters-in-law were pregnant, they were all doing, what's it called, prenatal education. How come I never see you doing that? Emily asked suddenly. Mom, that stuff is pure pseudoscience, Lucas said, blowing on a spoonful of soup before offering it to Lily. You didn't know about prenatal education when you were pregnant with me, right? Am I dumber than other kids? Emily blinked. He had a point. Seizing the opportunity, Lucas pressed on. And you two don't have to work so hard making soup all the time. Just coming over to visit is enough. Times have changed. You don't have to feed a pregnant woman broth constantly. I'm cooking according to the meal plan Jason's housekeeper gave me. She's getting enough nutrients. The main issue was that Lily stubbornly refused to drink it. She'd take a few sips, and since they couldn't throw it out, the rest of it ended up in his stomach. He finally understood why Jason had gained 15 pounds during Vanessa's pregnancy. Lately, he'd started jogging every day without Lily even having to ask. Emily's eyebrows shot up. Lucas, I mentioned prenatal education. You call it pseudoscience. I bring soup. You say to drink less of it. Are you determined to argue with everything I say? This was so strange. All her colleagues had helped their daughters-in-law this way, and none of their grandchildren had turned out poorly. Why was it suddenly a problem in her house? And after all the time she'd spent swapping notes with all the other grandmothers-to-be. Am I going to harm my own child? Lucas retorted with a shrug. Am I going to harm my own grandchild? Emily shot back. Why can't it be a granddaughter? This sexism is infuriating. Lucas started, then immediately bolted. Luckily, the living room was spacious. Lucas dodged around the dining table as Emily chased him, the two of them circling it several times. Mom, I'm warning you. What goes around comes around. Lucas muttered from the other side of the table. Emily slammed her hand on the table. What? You think you're going to fight back? You can pull my oxygen plug when I'm old. How about that? I'd never. But just you wait. I'll take out on your grandson. You dare. Lily, still on the sofa, covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking with silent laughter. After a few more moments of Lucas's theatrical wails echoing through the room, Emily finally stopped, satisfied. She patted her hands together, ran her fingers through his hair, messing it up completely. You little punk, she said with a grin. Did you really think your old mom couldn't handle you? If you bully Lily again, I'll give you a real trip down memory lane. When did I bully her? Then why was she crying just now? Lucas whipped his head toward Lily, who quickly looked away. He gave up. He was defeated. Leaving Lucas to collapse dramatically onto the sofa, Emily turned back to Lily with a warm smile. Lily, honey, don't you learn from him? She gently pinched the girl's soft cheek, trying to find a bit of flesh. You're still too thin, and you're carrying twins. We need to fatten you up. You and the babies being healthy is all that matters. Okay, Lily nodded obediently, her sweet voice melting Emily's heart. What a wonderful daughter-in-law. Lucas silently picked himself up, running a hand through his now disheveled hair, his eyes full of resentment. His goofball had agreed so meekly, making Emily completely happy with her. But in a few minutes, she'd take a few sips of that soup, claim she was full, and he would be the one forced to finish it. His sweet little goofball had a dark heart. After Emily finally left, Lucas rubbed his red ear and shot Lily an annoyed look. She immediately scooted closer, hugging his arm tightly. I'm sorry. But if I told the truth, Mom would have lectured me all afternoon, just like last time. We'd both suffer. The last time Emily was about to come in, Lily had rushed to shut down the computer, only to find the only options were update and shut down, or update and restart. In her panic, she completely forgot she could just unplug it. As a result, she spent the entire afternoon being lectured by Emily while silently cursing a certain software company in her head. Lucas just huffed and closed his eyes. Lily squeezed his arm, rocking it back and forth. Honey. When he didn't respond, she took his hand and placed it on her thigh, stroking it gently. Still no reaction from Lucas, but the air conditioner remote suddenly beeped, lowering the temperature. As Lucas took a deep breath, Lily's nervous whisper reached his ear. If you're really struggling, I can help you. She looked at him earnestly. The doctor had said it was fine as long as they avoided the first and last trimesters, but neither of them had been brave enough. Lucas hadn't been to the office much these past few months and was constantly trying to distract himself. It was actually kind of pathetic to watch. A few days ago, he performed a party trick for her, reciting Hamlet's to be or not to be soliloquy. Backwards. It had left her utterly speechless. Feeling generous, are we? Lucas asked, eyeing her skeptically. MHM. She nodded eagerly, biting her lower lip. If you don't like using your hand, we could use something else. Lucas gently poked her forehead. A very tempting offer. But unfortunately, I'm a good person. She was the one who was truly suffering, sometimes so uncomfortable she couldn't sleep. What did he have to complain about? His discomfort was nothing compared to hers. In the late afternoon, as the sun began its descent, the oppressive heat outside finally started to break. Lily yawned, leaned over, and rested her head on Lucas's shoulder, her body as limp as water. "Sleepy?" Lucas asked. Her sleep schedule was all over the place now. She needed naps during the day. I'll help you to bed." In the bedroom, Lily, who had seemed on the verge of collapsing moments ago, suddenly perked up. She pulled a book from a nightstand and handed it to Lucas. "Your mom said we should do prenatal education. Can you read this to me?" "Of course," Lucas agreed with a smile. The silly goofball just wanted him to read to her while she closed her eyes, using prenatal education as an excuse. Then he saw the title of the book in her hands, and his smile twitched violently. The Dark Forest. Book 2 of the Three-Body Problem. What kind of prenatal education involved the three-body problem? What was she trying to do? Raise a wall-facer for birth? Lily's burst of energy was just for show. Carrying such a heavy belly and sleeping poorly every night, she simply didn't have much stamina. She hadn't been listening for long before her eyelids began to droop. The next time Lucas looked over, she was fast asleep. She was nestled in his arms, her body rising and falling with the even rhythm of her breath, lost in a deep slumber. Lucas lay on his side, not daring to move. He tossed the book aside and was about to brush a stray strand of hair from her face when he noticed the dark circles under her eyes. Her eyelids were slightly swollen, and her face looked drawn and tired. This goofball had always been a little too thin. She'd even been hospitalized for hypoglycemia once. A pang of tenderness shot through him. He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. "Thank you for everything, wifey. You're working so hard." He didn't think she'd heard, but she murmured a half-conscious snuggling deeper into his arms. "It's okay." A small smile formed on Lucas's lips. He watched the sliver of sunlight that slipped through the gap in the curtains, tracing the bright line it made on the floor tiles. A rare sense of peace washed over him. Life didn't need to be some grand adventure. A quiet, stable life like this was happiness itself. He didn't move a muscle, just lay there beside her, and at some point he too drifted off to sleep. When Lucas opened his eyes again, it was dusk. The horizon was a sharp line dividing day and night. The setting sun, half hidden, painted the clouds in brilliant shades of gold. He was walking along the riverfront path where he usually went for his morning jogs, casually admiring the view. But next to him was a little boy, nearly as tall as his shoulder, who he couldn't seem to shake. A little ways ahead, a girl in a school uniform walked along the curb as if it were a balance beam, her hands clasped behind her back. The evening breeze lifted her long hair, making it float to one side. She was going to twist her ankle. He felt an urge to walk faster and catch up, but he couldn't control his own steps. "Could you please put in a good word for me with Mom?" the boy suddenly pleaded, his face a mask of misery. "Otherwise, I'm going to get chewed out for sure." "Do I know you? Why should I stick up for you?" Lucas said irritably, trying to nudge him away. Kids these days had no respect. The boy scratched his head, looking wronged. "Dad, I just failed one test. You're going to disown me? I was running a fever." Lucas froze. "Dad? This little brat. Who was he calling Dad?" The boy then pointed an accusatory finger at the girl up ahead. "It's all her fault. She's the one who got me sick." The long-haired girl spun around, her cool eyes fixing on him. "Then how did Claire and I both get first place? We had fevers too. You guys just got lucky." The boy next to him stammered defiantly. "Oh, really? So tests are about luck now? In that case, we should just drop out of school and go live in a monastery. We'll be sure to get into a good college then." Lucas wasn't interested in their bickering. He finally had a chance to get a good look at the girl who had been walking ahead of him. She had a cool, composed beauty with features that were strikingly similar to his goofball. But her eyes, those clear, beautiful eyes, were a perfect copy of Lily's. Wait a second. Lucas suddenly realized something. The scene before him began to blur, as if viewed through a film of water. The long-haired girl saw him standing there, frozen. She tilted her head curiously and asked, "Dad? Wake up, sleepyhead. If you sleep any longer, you won't be able to sleep tonight." When he opened his eyes again, the first thing he saw was Lily's delicate face. The bedroom was dark. They hadn't turned on the lights. It had been broad daylight when he'd fallen asleep. Lucas was still disoriented. It took him a few seconds to process. "What time is it?" he mumbled. "I'll go make you dinner." "Already made it. Just wash your hands and come eat," Lily said, her voice laced with guilt as she fiddled with her fingers. He must have been exhausted to sleep for so long. "I told you, you're not supposed to be working." Lucas started to nag out of habit, rubbing his head as he sat up. He glanced out the window. It was already night, and the city was aglow with lights. He watched the streams of traffic in the distance, sitting quietly for a long moment before he spoke. I dreamed about our kids. Lily tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. Really? What did you dream? Seeing her tilt her head like that, Lucas couldn't help but smile. It was the exact same gesture. I dreamed our son failed a test. Oh no, do you think he takes after me? Lily asked, suddenly anxious. She'd always worried the kids would inherit her brain instead of Lucas's. How rude. Have you forgotten your own SAT scores? Lucas teased, still a little salty that her score had been higher than his. As he was speaking, she had already moved to sit beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. I dreamed we had twins, a boy and a girl, Lucas said, his eyes half closed as he recalled the details, speaking as if to himself. The corners of Lily's eyes crinkled. I hope that's true. Our son was really gentle, but he got tongue-tied when he was flustered, just like you. Our daughter was beautiful, with your eyes exactly, but her personality, I think she took after me. The girl hummed, listening quietly as she reached up to wipe a tear from the corner of his eye. Midwinter arrived, and the weather grew colder. Lucas stood at the window, watching the rain fall outside. It was already cold, and now it has to rain. The temperature is going to drop again in a few days. Sigh. Summer always just disappears. I miss the days of eating all the watermelon I wanted. Perhaps life with a pregnant Lily had been too full, leaving him busier than when he was at the office. Lucas felt like time was flying by. The days fell into a routine of taking care of Lily, with occasional trips to the company, and suddenly, it was the end of the year again. Why do you only start mourning the end of summer after autumn is already over? Lily asked, looking up from the anime she was watching. He'd done the same thing last year, right after they got married. This year was even more ridiculous. It was already December. Maybe because autumn doesn't make much of an impression, Lucas replied. He turned back to the coffee table and continued applying the foam corner guards he'd bought online. Today was supposed to be a hospital checkup, but the sudden downpour had forced them to postpone. He hadn't been idle, though. He'd spent the morning baby-proofing every sharp edge in the house. Protect the mother now, protect the kids later. He hadn't been raised so delicately, but even a small probability becomes 100% when it happens to you. It wasn't much effort, so there was no reason not to be cautious. The rain stopped in the afternoon, and Lucas took Lily to the hospital. The prenatal checkups had gone from every 2 weeks to every week. Lucas had a strange feeling that, barring any surprises, this would be their last one. After they finished the routine checks, Lucas asked the question he'd asked countless times before. How is everything? Looking good, the female doctor said, adjusting her glasses and peering at the report. Twins are usually delivered by C-section, but we have a dozen or so natural births every year. Your babies are in a good position, so you could consider a natural delivery. But it's very difficult, and your wife is still on the slender side. She might not have the stamina. We're fine with whatever. We'll follow the doctor's recommendation, Lucas said seriously. Then, a curious thought struck him. Which one hurts less, natural birth or a C-section? The doctor paused, her expression flat. They both hurt. Lucas felt like an idiot. The doctor said they could wait a few more days before considering being admitted to the hospital. Lucas was tempted to say money wasn't an issue, but he held his tongue. Lily hated hospitals. Admitting her early would only stress her out. Every time they came, even just for ultrasound, she'd wait outside while he talked to the doctor alone. Some shadows took longer than a few years to fade. When they got home, they found Sophia Thompson already there, tidying up the living room. Mom, you can just relax. I cleaned a couple of days ago, Lucas said. Old people can't sit still, Sophia replied, setting the broom aside. You two were out, so I assume you went to the hospital. What did the doctors say? Everything's great. Mom and babies are healthy, just waiting for them to make their appearance. Should be. Any day now, Lucas said as he helped Lily sit down. He took her hand and began his familiar litany. Don't be nervous, okay? If you feel anything at all, you tell me immediately. I'd rather make a false alarm trip than be too late. It's no trouble. We can always just come back home. Lily nodded numbly. Lucas kept telling her not to be nervous, apparently oblivious to the fact that his own hand was trembling. Sophia couldn't help but smile. Watching the two of them, she felt a wave of nostalgia. They were still just kids in her eyes, especially Lily. In her memory, Lily was still the little girl who followed her everywhere, calling her mommy. And now, soon, someone will be calling Lily mommy. Both of you relax, she said warmly. It's not as scary as you think. Back in my day, a lot of women gave birth right at home. In the afternoon, Jason called Lucas to go fishing. Lucas was about to refuse, but Sophia and Lily practically pushed him out the door. The two of them sat by the reservoir until evening, caught nothing, and each bought a fish on the way home. The next day, New Year's Day, Lucas couldn't focus on anything. He decided his car was parked in a bad spot and, like a madman, went downstairs and moved it as close as possible to the building's entrance. To hell with etiquette. It was time to embrace his inner jerk. When he came back up, he tried to distract himself with a book, picking a brainy one, and then there were none. He stared at it for half an hour. He recognized every word, but none of the sentences made any sense. He was sitting on the sofa like a statue when Lily slowly walked over, her voice timid. It kind of hurts. Do you think it's time? Lily bit her lip hard, giving a barely perceptible nod. I'm not sure, but I have a feeling. Lucas froze for 2 seconds. Then his expression snapped back to its usual calm. He quickly helped her up. Let's go to the hospital, he said softly. Lily found it strange. Just moments ago, Lucas had been a bundle of nerves, and now, suddenly, all his anxiety was gone. He was back to being the Lucas she knew best, cool and composed no matter the situation. It was a good thing, too. If he were as nervous as she was, she would have died of fright. As they got out of the car at the hospital entrance, they both noticed the thick, dark clouds blanketing the sky. It was the middle of the day, but it was as dark as evening. It looked like it was about to snow. Is this a bad omen? Lily whispered, her voice weak. Don't be silly. When George Washington crossed the Delaware, the weather was even crazier. Did he lose? Lucas said, immediately wondering why on earth he'd brought that up. To his surprise, Lily actually gave a slight nod. Whatever works, I guess. As he was about to walk into the hospital, Lucas noticed a single snowflake land on his shoulder. It rested there on his black down jacket, perfectly white and still, despite the cold wind. He smiled faintly and turned to help Lily inside. January 1, SD. New Year's Day, the start of a new year. That day, it began to snow in Seattle. The flakes fell faster and thicker, a swirling curtain of white that quieted the entire world. Inside the hospital, however, it was anything but quiet. We're not late, are we? Emily and Robert Carter, despite living farther away, had arrived at almost the same time. Sis, how are you feeling right now? Emma asked, her voice a little too loud. Emily immediately swatted the back of her head. I can't really describe it. The main thing is the pain. Lily answered patiently, beads of sweat on her forehead. Unlike in the movies, you didn't just feel a contraction, rush to the hospital, and have a baby. In reality, there was a long period of labor between the first pains and actually going into the delivery room. As for how long, a few hours or a dozen, that was up to fate. After all the paperwork was done, Lily was taken to a room to wait. The crowd of people squeezed inside felt overwhelming, so they decided to wait outside, leaving the young couple alone. They're all gone now. Are you still holding it in? Lucas asked, gently wiping the sweat from her forehead with a tissue. If you want to cry, cry. You're the biggest crybaby I know. Normally, her tears flowed like a broken faucet, but now, when it really mattered, she hadn't shed a single one. I'm really okay right now. You guys don't have to worry so much, she said softly, trying to sound casual. But Lucas could see the tears shimmering in her eyes. He didn't say anything, just nodded and squeezed her hand tighter. Lucas. Yeah. Lily's face was pale, but she managed a sweet smile. I love you. Lily had arrived at the hospital at noon. It wasn't until evening that she was finally taken into the delivery room. Lucas had tried to give the doctor a thick envelope, but it had been refused. It didn't matter. He hadn't expected them to take it, but he'd wanted them to see how thick it was. Watching the operating room doors swing shut, Lucas felt like a piece of his own heart had been carved out. He began to pace aimlessly in the hallway. Hey bro, want to play a game of tic-tac-toe on my phone? Emma asked, getting dizzy from watching him pace back and forth. I'm busy, don't bother me. Emma blinked. Busy with what? Pacing? Lucas was in no mood for her. His mind was racing, filled with all the horror stories he'd read about amniotic fluid embolisms and sudden hemorrhages. Every time the thought surfaced, a chill ran down his spine. He'd shake his head, trying to clear the nightmare from his mind. It would be fine. He had dreamed it would be fine. He found himself back in front of the parents. Emily was taking deep breaths, periodically digging her nails into Robert's side. Sophia sat with her eyes closed, her lips moving in a silent prayer. Robert, however, was calm, his eyes bright and focused as he stood quietly against the wall. Dad, what is it? I'm going to be a dad, Lucas said, his eyes red. I know, Robert replied, a small smile touching his lips. He started to raise a hand to pat his son's head, like he used to when Lucas was a boy, but thought better of it and let his arm fall. Lucas walked away again. He felt, in that moment, that he was understanding his father for the first time. Robert had been young once, too. He had walked this same path. He had probably sat here, terrified and anxious, waiting for Lucas to be born. He had poured all of his love into his wife and his unborn child, just as Lucas was doing now. Outside, the sky was still dark and overcast, the snow falling relentlessly. Lucas knew that from this window, you could see 26 trees. He knew there were 244 tiles within his line of sight in the hallway. He knew that his mother, in her nervousness, had pinched his father exactly 10 times. But he had no idea why it was taking so long in the operating room. He didn't know how much time had passed. "You're very lucky. A boy and a girl." A nurse's voice came from behind him. Finally, Lucas felt himself breathe again. He felt his heart begin to beat. "How is she? How's my wife?" Lucas asked urgently. "They're both doing great." The mother was incredibly strong. The operating room doors slowly closed again. But the weight that had been crushing Lucas's chest finally lifted. He realized his legs were sore, and he leaned against the wall, feeling drained. He looked over at Emma, who was nonchalantly crossing her legs, and they shared a smile. "You can keep being a little menace," his smile said. "Your brother is a dad now." "Twins, a boy and a girl," Emily murmured, her eyes red. She turned to Sophia, who was still staring blankly, and gently patted her shoulder. "Sophia, did you hear?" I heard. Sophia finally let out a relieved breath, smiling as she wiped away her tears. "Old man, you're a grandfather now. Do you hear me?" She thought, sending a silent message to the heavens. "Remember to watch over these 2 children and keep them safe. And Lily and Lucas, too. They're still just children themselves." Sophia paused. A thought flickered in her mind. You used to always be asking for this blessing and that protection. How is it that now it's your turn to be the one protecting us? Sometime later, the heavy snow had stopped, blanketing the city in a pristine white. A few stars twinkled in the black night sky, which was exceptionally calm. In the recovery room, Lily slowly opened her eyes. As she expected, the first thing she saw was her entire world. Lucas was sitting right in front of her. He looked exhausted. "Where are my parents?" "And yours?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Lucas seemed to be staring into space, his eyes unfocused. Her voice snapped him back. He looked at her, and a smile instinctively spread across his face. "They're waiting outside. They didn't want a crowd to disturb you," he said, starting to get up. "I'll go get them." He stood, but saw Lily weakly reach for him. He immediately sat back down, taking her outstretched hand and tucking it back under the warm blankets. She didn't even have the strength to hold on to him. Her arm had fallen halfway. Lucas gently stroked her cheek. "How are you feeling? Is there any pain?" Lily's face was still pale, her lips dry and chapped. Her eyes were heavy-lidded, and she looked drained. "I'm okay." She smiled at him, and, just like always, she nuzzled her cheek into the palm of his hand. Looking out the window at the dark night, then back at the sterile hospital room, she felt a sense of surrealism. "This reminds me," she said softly, "of when you stayed with me in the hospital before. Back then, she had been so nervous when he fed her that she could barely breathe. Now, they were married, with children. It felt like a lifetime ago, a different world." "I was just thinking about that," Lucas said, gently brushing the hair that was stuck to her cheek. "That was the first time I ever saw you smile." His goofball was still a goofball, working herself to the point of hypoglycemia just to buy him a DSLR camera. Even thinking about it now, so much later, made his nose tingle. "You were tricking me even back then, before we were even together," Lily pouted, the memory sparking a little indignation. "Trick you into being my girlfriend, then trick you into being the mother of my children. Miss Thompson, any comments?" "So you admit it? And you still claim to be a perfect gentleman?" It seemed that dredging up old grievances was a universal female talent. She still remembered him using that line on her. "Gentlemen can have children." Just as they were talking, the door to the room opened slowly. 2 nurses in masks entered, each holding a freshly cleaned human baby. Lily's eyes, which had been half closed, widened slightly. "Excuse me," she whispered. "Which one came out first?" "The boy came out first, so he's the big brother," one of the nurses said with a smile. She saw births every day, but moments like this still felt special. Twins were rare enough, let alone a boy and a girl. With a wife this beautiful and instant fatherhood to a son and daughter, this man had hit the jackpot. "A big brother is good, too," Lily said, her eyes curving into crescents. "He can protect his little sister." Lucas thought the 2 was a bit strange. He leaned in and whispered, "If you want, we can just say the girl is the older sister. It's not like they'll know." The 2 nurses chuckled, placed the babies in the bassinets beside the bed, gave a few instructions, and left. Lily carefully shifted closer to the edge of the bed, her heart melting as she looked at the two infants lying side by side. She instinctively reached out to touch one of the tiny hands. The moment her finger made contact, the baby's hand closed around it, gripping it tightly. The baby's hand was so small, it couldn't even wrap all the way around her thumb, but it held on as if by instinct. Compared to this tiny hand, her own felt enormous. "I'm your mommy," Lily whispered, her eyes welling up with tears, just as they had when the first contractions hit. But this time, it was pure happiness. Lucas gently took the hand Lily had extended and held it in his own. "Have you thought of names for our kids?" he asked softly. "We agreed you would get to choose." I have. Actually, right after we got together, I already had names picked out." Lucas smiled. "What are they?" "But I want to choose new ones now," Lily said, her voice soft as she lay in hospital bed, gently stroking the babies. "On the way to the hospital, we saw those thick clouds gathering for the first time, right? So the big brother will be named Caleb. Caleb Carter." Lucas remembered the snowflake that had landed on his shoulder. The wind had been blowing so hard, yet it had stayed. It felt as if these two little eyes had been playfully tapping his shoulder, telling him, "We're coming." His eyes reddened, and tears welled up. He took Lily's hand and pressed it against his cheek. "Let me guess," he choked out. "The little sister is named Stella?" He guessed because he figured Lily had drawn inspiration from the moment. And he couldn't help but think of the phrase "from morning's light to evening's star." Together, their names perfectly encapsulated the scenery of their birth. Lily's eyes widened in surprise, then softened into a warm, knowing smile. They were perfectly in sync. Her eyes shone with love. Yes, Caleb, Stella. They had a nice ring to them. Lucas knew that whenever he said their names, he would remember the stormy clouds gathering over the city and the gentle, goose-down snow that fell that evening. But he would never forget the look in Lily's eyes as she endured the pain of labor, tears shimmering but never falling. And seeing her now, her normally bright, clear eyes heavy with exhaustion, his heart ached. "What's wrong?" "I'm not even crying," Lily said, reaching up to wipe a tear from his cheek. It was strange. She, the resident crybaby, had held it together, while Lucas, who rarely cried, couldn't seem to stop. Lucas managed a small laugh and pressed a kiss to the back of her hand. "Lily, thank you. Thank you for marrying me." I should be thanking you for wanting to marry me." Just then, Robert Carter happened to walk up to the door. Hearing their soft whispers, he glanced down at the piece of paper in his hand. It was covered with more than 20 names. Names he had solicited from literature professors at the university over a series of dinners. These were experts, some of the best in the country. He smiled to himself, crumpled the paper into a ball, and stuffed it in his pocket. No name could ever be as good as the one a mother chose herself. Just like the names Emily had chosen for their 2 children. He sighed, just as a figure zipped past him. He quickly reached out and grabbed her arm. Emily looked at him, confused. "Don't rush." Robert cleared his throat. "The new parents are having a moment. Why are you going in?" "Oh, I wanted to see my grandchildren," Emily said, a little disappointed, but she dutifully stayed put. "You can see them in a bit," Robert said, nodding toward the room. A grin spread across his face. "Look at them in there, all lovey-dovey. You'll have plenty of opportunities to babysit in the future." What was that saying? Ah, yes. The parents are the true love story. The children are just a happy accident. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas asked, noticing Lily staring blankly at the ceiling. "I was thinking, if I hadn't met you that night, what would I be doing right now?" Lily's fingertips gently traced the back of his hand. The kind of just about to that meant blinking back tears and getting up that very second. She couldn't imagine it, and she didn't want to. She glanced at her 2 children. Stella still had her eyes closed, only occasionally stirring with a little stretch. Caleb's eyes, however, were wide open, darting back and forth as if he were trying to take in everything at once. He really did take after her a little bit of a dork. A newborn's vision was blurry, but there he was, trying his best. Lily felt a wave of anxiety, a fear that she was too happy. Lucas was about to tell her not to overthink things, but then changed his mind. "We would have met somewhere else." "Really?" Lucas nodded, a wicked grin on his face. "Just accept your fate. No matter what, you were always destined to fall into my hands." To his surprise, her eyes crinkled into a smile. That's nice. She had always felt that no matter when or where she met Lucas, she would have fallen in love with him. "Move. Let me see my niece and nephew." Emma burst through the door like a hurricane, so fast that Robert, who was standing outside, couldn't stop her. The other parents looked at each other, figured the moment was lost, and followed her in. Lucas shot his sister a glare. Lily just smiled and patted the bassinet beside her. "They're here." Emma leaned over, her hands flitting between the two tiny babies, gently poking their hands. "Auntie." "Say, Auntie." Whoever says it first gets a New Year's present. The adults all stared at her like she was an idiot before crowding around Lily's bed. Seeing that Lily was looking well and the babies were healthy, they all breathed a collective sigh of relief. Even with modern medicine, childbirth was still a journey through hell and back. It was never easy. Now, they could finally relax. "Mom, was I this ugly when I was born?" Emma suddenly asked. Emily made a sking sound and smacked her. "Don't say that. They just haven't grown into their features yet. You were much uglier." "Emma, do you have no soul? How dare you call my children ugly?" Lucas muttered, then looked down at his precious son and daughter. Wrinkly red. Okay, maybe they were a little ugly. Fortunately, Jason had been the trailblazer here. Lucas knew that babies got cuter over time, so he wasn't too worried. "Mom, this is the big brother. His name is Caleb," Lucas said to Emily, then pointed to the baby wrapped in a pink blanket. "And this is the little sister, Stella." He had noticed his mom's eyes darting toward the bassinets from the moment she walked in, but she had hesitated to approach, wanting to check on Lily first. So Lucas decided to invite her over himself. Beautiful names, beautiful. The two grandmothers cooed over the bassinets, their smiles so wide they couldn't possibly fade. "Mom, why are my name and my brother's name this poetic?" Emma complained. And so, Emma received a thorough scolding right in front of her newborn niece and nephew. That night, Lily was finally starting to feel a bit more like herself. With everything settled, Lucas stayed in the room alone to keep her company. He watched her as she lay on her side, gently tickling the babies with her finger. He pulled out his phone and posted on his Facebook timeline for the third time in his life. First day of the new year. One is 5 pounds, the other is 5 pounds 2 Oz. My life is complete. Grinning face with smiling eyes, Jason. Holy crap. Which reservoir did you catch those at? Lucas. These are my children, you moron. He suddenly felt he should have included a picture. Jason, probably embarrassed, didn't reply. A moment later, Aaron commented, "Ask your kids where they caught such big fish for me." Lucas's mouth twitched. He put his phone away, done with these weirdos. They decided to keep Lily in the hospital for a few extra days, just to be safe. A week later, they finally went home. The house immediately filled with life. Because the doctor had mentioned that the new mother was a bit delicate, Emily and Sophia launched a full-scale research operation into postpartum recovery soups. While no one disturbed the two human infants, the house was never quiet. Lucas wanted to explain to the two grandmothers that nutrition wasn't exclusively found in broth, but Emily wouldn't hear of it. Her logic was simple. If everyone else was doing it, it might not be perfect, but it couldn't be wrong. Robert knew better, but Robert didn't dare speak up. So, after a few failed attempts, Lucas gave up and just decided to add a few miles to his daily run. Afternoon. The house was finally quiet, just the 5 of them. After lunch, Lucas and Lily were back in a usual spot, leaning over the crib, watching the two babies slowly acclimate to the world. For the first few days, Stella had kept her eyes closed and barely moved. Lucas had assumed she would be quiet and gentle like her mom. The two grandmothers had agreed, saying she would grow up to be just like Lily. They had all been wrong. Stella had been deceiving everyone. She hadn't been resting. She'd been calibrating her controls for planet Earth. These days, the moment she was hungry, she cried. And once she was fed and full of energy, she started tormenting Caleb. She'd pull his clothes, tug his ears, and occasionally even try to gum him, despite not having any teeth. Like right now, she was gnawing on Caleb's arm. Lucas gently pried her off, sighing, "Our daughter seems to have a mischievous streak. A real handful from day one." On second thought, that was probably for the best. If her personality was exactly like her mom's, he'd have to worry. A girl that beautiful and that naive? He'd have to spend his life fending off suitors. He glanced at Lily. Yup, even now, as a mother of 2, her face still screamed, "I am very gullible. Please come trick me." It was ridiculous. Lily smiled, gently rubbing Caleb's arm. "Stella takes after you. That is slander of the highest order," Lucas huffed, turning his attention back to the babies. He knew, intellectually, that personality was shaped over time, but for the past few days, he and Lily couldn't stop attributing the babies' every quirk to one another. "He gets that from you." Or, "She looks just like you there." Every time they found a new similarity, they would break into silly grins, the reality that these children truly belonged to them, sinking in a little deeper. They were the product of their love, the continuation of their lives. Speaking of which, Caleb was proving to be a true big brother. It was hard to tell if he was just tolerant or a bit of a dork like his mom, but unless he was truly pushed to his limit, he wouldn't cry. He was surprisingly patient with Stella. Lucas finally understood what Lily meant when she said it felt like the two of them were fighting inside her. My first toy was my big brother, a memoir. Lucas suddenly felt a twinge of worry. What was going to happen when they started teething? Dottie watched them from a distance, her copper eyes filled with confusion. She looked at the crib, which was half as tall as a person, then at the two humans and their awestruck expressions. She tilted her head and licked her paw. These two-legged creatures were pregnant for almost a year, and they only managed to have two? That's it. Dottie was embarrassed by the two-legged creatures and their complete lack of worldliness. Her own mother had given birth to a litter of 6, though in the end, she was the only one who had survived life on the streets. After cleaning her paw, Dottie suddenly found her new purpose in life. She had to watch over these two cubs and make sure they grew up. A moment later, Lucas saw Dottie streak out of the bedroom. He didn't think much of it until she returned, dragging her own little sleeping bed behind her. She placed it on the floor, not far from the crib. Huh, is the dumb cat tired of living in the art studio? Lucas remembered when they first found Dottie, how small and skinny she was, how she would tiptoe around the apartment, only willing to sleep on the balcony of their old rental. In the blink of an eye, more than 2 years had passed, and Dottie was now a big, healthy cat. The next time my mom comes over and sees the kids sleeping in the same room as the cat, she's definitely going to lecture me, Lily murmured, chewing on her lip. But it should be fine, right? Dottie is so well-behaved. She's never even broken anything. They had just started their quiet conversation when the sound of a baby crying filled the room. Lucas assumed Caleb's patience had finally run out, but when he looked down, he saw it was Stella who was crying. That meant she was hungry. She needed to refuel before she could go back to playing with her big brother. Trisha, Mommy's here, Lily cooed, lifting Stella into her arms. She rocked her gently as she fed her, her eyes soft and her movements filled with a tenderness that made Lucas feel a little dazed. It seemed his goofball had an endless supply of patience, whether it was for him or for their 2 children. It was as if she had given them all the love she possessed, never once growing impatient. A few minutes later, I'm never drinking my mom's soup again. Even the babies can't finish it all, Lily said, looking down at her baby with a mix of shock and dismay. The babies were full and wouldn't drink another drop, but there was still so much left. I'll get a bowl. Maybe you can drink it, the girl asked, her voice tiny. Lucas felt a flash of awkwardness, but then he remembered that he'd done this before when they were hiking. He decided to give it a try. He took a few sips and immediately ran for the bathroom. It was very different from what he'd imagined. After rinsing his mouth out, Lucas sat on the sofa with his laptop, messaging Leo Jenkins about the development progress of Gate of Terminus. Before, he only had to provide for the goofball in his house. Now, with 2 more little money pits, he had to work hard for that formula money. The game had been in development for over a year now, with about another year to go until the planned launch. Fortunately, investment was like a school of fish. When other investors saw so many people putting money into a project, they all wanted a piece of the pie. So, even though the boss of the company was still being supported by his artist wife, Polaris Interactive had never been short on cash. And with money, most development problems weren't really problems. Everything was proceeding smoothly. They could probably start the first round of closed beta testing in about 6 months. That's when they would need to start marketing, building hype. And that's when he, the leader, would need to step in. For now, he could leave it to Jason and Leo. Walking feels so much easier now. Lily's voice broke his concentration. He looked up to see her strolling slowly around the living room in a light yellow, rabbit print cardigan pajama set, as if she were rediscovering the feeling of freedom. Come here and let me give you a hug, he said, patting his lap like he was calling a child, his arms open wide. I'm not a little kid, Lily muttered, turning her face away with a pout. But after a moment, she snuck a glance at him, and finally couldn't resist throwing herself into his arms. She had been pregnant for so long. It had been ages since Lucas had held her like this. Lucas felt it too. He slipped his hand under her pajama top, gently caressing her stomach. You know, I just realized your timing was perfect, he said. Your belly hadn't gotten big yet when you finished your classes, and then you gave birth just before you had to wear a cap and gown for graduation photos. She hadn't missed a thing, and no one on the outside even knew. Plus, her work didn't require her to go into an office. Unlike other women, she wouldn't have to choose between her career and her kids in these first few years, either unable to be there for them or forced to become a stay-at-home mom. Wait a second. That night they got married, when she said he didn't need to use a condom. Could she have planned all of this back then? Lily had said it was her safe period, but after almost a year, he couldn't remember if that was true. If so, did that mean he was the one who had been played? The strange thought flashed through Lucas's mind before he dismissed it. Impossible. His silly goofball isn't that smart. The advantage was his. Lucas mentally reassured himself and pecked Lily on the cheek. My mom probably won't be over for a while. Want to sneak in a game? I'll be your lookout, he whispered in her ear like a little devil. Since becoming pregnant, his goofball had developed a bigger appetite and a more playful streak. Lucas had a feeling she'd been itching to play a game since they got home, but was too scared. Lily was tempted. Her eyes drifted to the computer that had been sealed off by the two grandmothers. Is that a good idea? She felt like she could probably claim a welcome back reward by now. Even if the rewards were pathetic, every little bit counted. She still hadn't unlocked all the champions. What's not good about it? The kids are both asleep. Are you planning to watch them 24/7? Lucas said without batting an eye. He had a feeling this phrase would become a frequent part of their conversations. The kids are asleep. Let's go sneak some food or do something else. It sounded fun, exciting. Okay, you be my lookout. I'll just play for a little bit. If mom comes, just pull the plug. Halfway through the game, Lily shot up and looked toward the bedroom. It's Caleb's turn to cry, she said, waving a hand at Lucas. You take over for me. I'll go soothe him. Lucas glanced at the screen. Lily's Nidalee had a score of 2-0-1. Not bad. He had no idea why his goofball liked playing this kind of champion. Everyone knew that to play Nidalee, you had to live in the enemy's jungle. He immediately ran into the enemy jungle and saw the enemy jungler, Amumu, taking his blue buff. He reflexively hit the D key for smite. There was nothing more satisfying than stealing something right in front of someone's face. Unless, of course, it was stealing it and then getting away clean. Instead, he performed a perfect flash in place. His teammates spam question mark pings all around him. Annoyed, he yelled toward the bedroom. Lily, can you please use flash on F from now on? Otherwise, I keep hitting the wrong key. But I'm not used to it, Lily called back, rocking the baby in her arms. A four-time world champion once said that only silver leaguers use D for flash. Lucas grumbled, staring at his grayed-out screen as he waited to respawn. The next day, the house was once again filled with its usual lively chaos. With two experienced grandmothers taking care of the precious pandas, Lucas was mostly relegated to being an assistant, unable to do much more than watch from the sidelines. Mom, I can feed Lily. You should take a break, the new father said, trying to find some way to be useful. If you're really that bored, go help in the kitchen with the soup. Don't get in the way here. Lucas and Lily exchanged a helpless glance, both of them suppressing a smile. It looked like they wouldn't get to be alone together until after the first month was over. That afternoon, Lucas finally got a break when Jason called him. They decided to go fishing together again. Don't you think we're a little young to be taking up fishing? Lucas couldn't help but tease as soon as he saw Jason at the reservoir. In college, he used to make fun of his dad for doing this, never imagining he'd become one of them. Question the fisherman, understand the fisherman, become the fisherman. Jason gazed out at the sparkling water, stroking his brand-new fishing rod. Wake up, man. New Year's is over. We're 25 this year. We're not that young anymore. Jason fumbled in his pocket. Lucas thought he was reaching for a cigarette, but instead, he pulled out a lollipop and popped it in his mouth. Once Claire starts school, I'll officially be a middle-aged dad. It hit Lucas then, and his eyes widened. Crap. How am I 24? In his early 20s, he still felt like he'd just become an adult. He couldn't use that excuse to comfort himself anymore. Time waited for no one. They were no longer the kids who would pull all-nighters at the arcade and then sleep through their morning classes. Lucas stopped teasing and sat down beside him. Suddenly, fishing didn't seem so bad after all. Two married men with kids sitting together again. The feeling was completely different now. When men are under pressure, they need to find ways to distract themselves. Go to an arcade? Some of the people there were louder than the toddlers at home. Fishing was better. It was quiet. And if you caught a fish, you could eat it. Why the sudden invitation today? Lucas asked. Jason chewed on the lollipop stick, a cool smirk on his face. That woman was being unreasonable. I left her at home to reflect on her actions. Seriously? What are you trying to pull? How do you manage to make getting kicked out of the house sound so noble? Lucas looked at him like he was an idiot, but played along. What did Vanessa do? This morning, Vanessa started complaining she had no clothes to wear. I was confused. I said, you have so many clothes. You stand in front of a closet full of clothes every day and say you have nothing to wear. Are you crazy? And then she kicked me out. And then I left her at home to reflect. Jason smacked his lips. Do you think all girls are like that? It drives me crazy. She never even wears the same thing twice. I know, right? Emma's the same, says she has no clothes. She's been like that since she was a kid. It's not that the old clothes don't fit, She just doesn't want to wear them anymore, Lucas said, agreeing enthusiastically. He couldn't very well say that his wife wasn't like that at all, that she occasionally bought new clothes specifically because she knew he'd like them, right? That would be too cruel. He couldn't undermine his friend's marriage. The two married men sat there until dusk. Jason was getting annoyed. He'd come out here to clear his head, but after sitting for an entire afternoon without a single bite, all he'd gotten was an interrogation from the guy next to him about the ins and outs of childcare. Lucas had asked about everything, right down to how long it took for Claire to learn to crawl. He looked at the darkening sky and figured Vanessa had probably had enough time to reflect. If he went back and knocked, she would probably let him in. "I'm done," he said, standing up. "We haven't caught a single one. We're going to get laughed at if we go home like this," Lucas said, not wanting to leave. Jason spit on the ground, thought for a moment, and then said, "How about we buy one on the way back?" Lucas stared at the motionless bobber on the water's surface and said nothing for a long time. At the fish market, the pungent smell of fish hit them as they approached the stall. Lucas had been worried about smelling like fish after a successful afternoon, but he hadn't caught a thing. He was about to laugh at the irony when he heard Jason say, "Hey, boss, I'll give you extra money if you let me fish in your tank for a bit." Lucas quickly shoved him away. From the look on the fishmonger's face, he suspected Jason had just escaped from a mental hospital. When he got home, Lily was on the sofa, dangling a strand of her hair to entertain the babies. She looked bored. He knew the two matriarchs hadn't let her watch TV. When she saw him come in, she gasped. "Did you catch that?" Lucas was non-committal, silently setting down his fishing rod. "I was out all afternoon." If he couldn't bring himself to lie to his goofball, he could at least stick to the truth. "It's huge." Lily's clear, beautiful eyes were filled with adoration. Emily, who was in the kitchen cooking, came out and snorted. "Better than your dad." Robert hadn't figured out the buy a fish on the way home trick until he was in his 30s, and she had laughed at him for years. Lucas had learned the trick in his 20s, saving himself a decade of ridicule. But was her daughter-in-law really this naive? She actually believed him? Lucas thought Emily was actually complimenting him and scratched his head, feeling a little guilty. "I'll make you fish soup tonight," he said to Lily with a smile. Lily nodded enthusiastically. "You're so amazing." For some reason, that didn't sit right with Lucas. Damn it. How did those other fishermen manage to lie with a straight face? The two rookie parents had zero experience. After a chaotic half-month, they finally made it to the baby's 1-month milestone. Caleb and Stella's 1-month birthday happened to coincide with Claire's first birthday. The two families decided that since Jason's father wasn't coming anyway, they'd skip the big parties and just celebrate together. "Hurry up and set everything out," Jason said, his daughter on his back, as he cheerfully arranged a pile of items on the bed. There was a calligraphy brush, an abacus, a dictionary, a credit card, all sorts of random things. Little Claire was a year old. When they'd first seen her, she was a wrinkly little thing, but now she had really grown into her features. You can always tell if someone's going to be good-looking from a young age. She was quiet on Jason's back, with a cool, composed expression, the very definition of a future beauty. Would she grow up to be a formidable woman? Lucas chuckled to himself, then leaned over to whisper in Lily's ear, "Do you still have your first birthday pictures?" "I do, but can you please not look at them?" Lily was wearing a pale green, waist-cinching dress that he remembered well. It was the one he'd given her before they were even together. After being cared for like a precious panda for so long, she had lost all the exhaustion of childbirth. Her skin was fair and soft, and her figure. If she weren't holding Caleb, no one would ever guess she was a mother of two. She could probably blend in with the freshmen. Though, technically, she wouldn't officially graduate until June. The quiet Claire was placed in the center of the bed, her eyes wide with confusion as she looked at the strange objects surrounding her. "That's your big sister," Lucas said, gently bouncing Stella in his arms. Newborns changed every day. Stella's eyes were much bigger now, and she was unbearably cute. "Add this," Vanessa said, placing a book on the bed. Lucas leaned in for a look. Good grief. A law textbook. Then she smiled and nodded at Lily. "You're the godmother. You should put something on there too." Lily blinked, first letting out a reflexive, "Huh," before whispering, "Okay." A moment later, Lily hurried back from her art studio and carefully placed her paintbrush in front of Claire. Caleb, at only a month old, could barely make out the shapes in front of him. Seeing all the new and exciting things on the bed, he reached out his little hand to grab something. Claire, who had been chewing on her fingers, saw the smaller human and her eyes filled with curiosity. A baby explores the world in one of two ways, either by grabbing or by putting things in its mouth. By the time Lily realized what was happening, Claire had a firm grip on Caleb's cheek and wasn't letting go. Caleb's hand, which had been reaching for the paintbrush, froze in midair. His small eyes, not yet fully opened, widened slightly. He was used to this kind of treatment from his time in the womb, but he had never experienced this level of force. Stella simply didn't have the strength. After less than 2 seconds of processing, he burst into tears. As Caleb cried, he instinctively tried to push her away. But reaching out was a mistake. The moment he did, Claire saw something even more fun and immediately grabbed one of his outstretched fingers. Lily was completely frozen. She felt she couldn't pull them apart, but she couldn't just stand there either. She was stuck, unable to move. "Caleb, sweetie, don't cry, don't cry," she whispered helplessly. A baby's fingers were so tiny, she felt like if she pulled, something might break. Seeing Caleb wailing, the usually stoic Claire started giggling, revealing a set of cute, pearly white baby teeth. Lily and Vanessa had never seen anything like it. A 1-year-old was surprisingly strong, and they were both starting to panic. What were they supposed to do? Lily bit her lip, her first instinct to call for her husband. But when she looked over, Lucas was standing there, filming the whole thing with his phone. The father not only showed no signs of concern, but he was also laughing so hard he could barely stand. "Ha, did you get that?" Lucas laughed, nudging Jason's shoulder. Got it. Jason was laughing so hard his phone was shaking. He tried to steady the shot, moving to get a better angle. "Claire, don't pull too hard, or you're going to be in big trouble when we get home." "The phone's not clear enough." Lucas slapped his thigh. "Wait, I'll get the DSLR." Aaron, who had been struggling not to laugh the whole time, finally managed to distract Claire with a nearby teddy bear and scooped her up. Even though she wanted to watch a little longer, she was Caleb's godmother. After all, she couldn't just let the little guy suffer. Lily breathed a sigh of relief, exchanged a dazed look with Vanessa, and then turned her gaze back to Lucas. At that moment, Lucas returned with his camera, a look of disappointment on his face when he saw the two children had been separated. Lily took several deep breaths. There were guests here. She couldn't hit him. She had to maintain her husband's dignity. Vanessa had no such restraint. She grabbed Jason by the ear and dragged him out of the room. In that single, shared glance, the two women had reached a consensus. From this day forward, they would never let their husbands babysit. And they would certainly never let these two men take any child anywhere together. The two grown men were exiled to the living room. As Aaron closed the door, she gave him a mischievous wave. Now that the initial excitement had worn off, Lucas was starting to worry. They say a boy's personality takes after his mother. But this kid gets his cheeks pinched by his sister at home, and now by his older sister when they go out. Something about that felt strange. Was this good luck or bad luck? Jason, on the other hand, had no such concerns. If Caleb had been the one to grab his daughter instead of one of the items, he probably would have been ready to fight Lucas. But since his daughter was the one doing the grabbing, and Caleb was the one crying, he chalked it up to Claire just playing with the baby. The thought of it made him laugh. Humans are just that hypocritical. "Have you heard from Ryan Brooks lately?" Jason asked, rubbing his red ear. Since he was banned from the first grab ceremony, he decided to make some small talk to ease the awkwardness. No, Lucas shook his head. He'd seen a picture of Ryan's marriage certificate on Facebook once, and then he'd gone off the grid to live his quiet life. As long as we know they're doing well, that's enough. Everyone's busy with their own lives. There's not always much to talk about. That girl's mom, what's her name? She went and caused a scene at the police station again a while back. Lucas caught a keyword. Again. She did it right after they eloped. The police here contacted the authorities in the other state, saw that the couple was doing fine, and since no minors or kidnapping was involved, they dropped it. Jason slumped onto the sofa. Ryan is a smart guy. They send her mom money every month, so she can't sue them for not providing support. As for coming home, even a king can't settle a family dispute. No sane person wants to get involved in that mess. He squinted, looking out the window. It was noon, and the sunlight streamed through the glass, finally warming them up. The sky was a brilliant blue, with only a few scattered clouds, like lonely ships on a vast ocean. "I wonder when he'll come back," Jason sighed. "Maybe in a few years, when Sophie's mom finally realizes she was wrong, he might come back to Seattle," Lucas said, though he didn't really believe it. It was unlikely a middle-aged woman would change such a deeply ingrained mindset in just a few years. Even if she did accept their marriage, it would probably be because she finally realized she couldn't control him anymore, and just gave up. Ryan Brooks had just been incredibly unlucky. But at least he had found someone willing to drop everything and run away with him. And that jerk Dylan Cooper, who knows what he's been up to since he moved back home. Haven't heard from him lately either. Since we graduated, out of the 4 of us from our dorm, it's really just us 2 who still see each other regularly, Lucas said wistfully. "We knew this would happen when we graduated, didn't we?" Jason said calmly. If he could understand it, Lucas certainly could. Yeah, Lucas said, falling silent. The people and events of the past, both happy and sad, were now just memories, buried in time. Now, the most important thing for them was family. And only family. Just as he was lost in thought, the bedroom door, which had just been closed on them, slowly opened. Vanessa came out holding Claire. She saw Jason, lifted her chin, and gave a cold huff. What did our daughter grab in the ceremony? Jason asked eagerly. Caleb. I know that. What else? Also Caleb, Vanessa said, getting angrier as she spoke. The moment we tried to stop her, she would start screaming. In the end, Lily had no choice but to let her hold onto Caleb's arm. Only then did she stop crying. Wait, so out of all those things I laid out, she didn't grab a single one? Jason's mood soured. I put out so much food and toys for you. You could have grabbed anything, even a piece of bread to show you're a foodie. Your dad wouldn't have cared. Why did you have to grab that little boy? Oh, she grabbed something, Vanessa said, leaning against the doorframe, a mixture of anger and amusement on her face. She pointed to the two babies in Lily and Aaron's arms. She grabbed a handful of $100 bills, and that wasn't enough. She even stuffed a few into Stella's and Caleb's hands. Claire had never seen other children before. Vanessa suspected the little girl genuinely thought she was their big sister, and she was already taking her role very seriously. When Claire grows up, is she going to be even more of a pushover than Lily? Aaron asked, covering her mouth and widening her eyes in mock surprise. Seeing Jason's expression darken, Aaron deliberately brought Caleb over to him, parading the baby in front of him. When Jason looked away, she would pretend to be taking a stroll with the baby and walk right back into his line of sight. A vein throbbed in Jason's temple. He grabbed Vanessa's hand and started to leave, ignoring her protests about how childish he was being. My daughter is never coming to your house again, and your son is not allowed in mine. That was the last thing Jason said before he left. As Lucas went downstairs to see them off, Lily went back to tidy up the room, leaving Aaron on the sofa with the two babies. Seeing Caleb trying to stuff the money into his mouth, she smiled and gently took the bills from their tiny hands. These have germs on them, sweetie. You can't put them in your mouth, she cooed. What's this, Caleb? You want to give this money to me? Oh, I couldn't possibly. Stella, you too? Ah, your godmother is so touched. Well, if you insist, I'll hold on to it for you. I'll give it back when you're older. She was still entertaining herself when Lucas came back. Caleb and Stella were so baffled they had forgotten to cry. You're even swindling money from babies now, Lucas said, shaking his head at the sight of Aaron grinning foolishly at a few $100 bills. Aaron shot him a glare. What do you mean, swindle? This was a gift from my godson and goddaughter. Lucas nodded sagely. If you don't find a boyfriend, it'll be these two pulling your plug someday. Doctor, is this your godmother? Her condition isn't serious. A few days in the hospital should be fine. Caleb, whispering to his sister, maybe we should donate her organs? Stella, with a determined look, Doctor, we consent to the donation. Doctor? Lucas was chuckling at his imagined scenario as he pulled over a stool to sit down, only to land flat on the floor. He looked up, confused, and saw that Aaron had hooked the stool away with the tip of her foot. Aaron, are you insane? After all these years, I've finally gotten my revenge for you making me fall, Aaron declared, slinging her coat over her shoulder and striding toward the door, leaving behind the triumphant silhouette of someone whose long-held grudge had finally been settled. She didn't take the money she'd swindled from the babies. She left it on a shoe cabinet by the door. With a lively atmosphere gone, Dottie, who had been hiding in the art studio, trotted back into the master bedroom and resumed her post by the door like a loyal guard. Lucas had thought the cat was just tired of the art studio, but that wasn't it at all. Now, apart from eating and using the litter box, Dottie rarely left the baby's vicinity. She never got too close, but she was always within eyesight, sticking to them more closely than their own parents. Lily heard the thud and came out of the bedroom. She was startled to see Lucas on the floor. Why are you sitting on the ground? Aaron made me fall. As Lily helped him up, Lucas was still trying to remember when he had ever done such a thing. It took him a moment, but then it came back to him. It was when he and Lily were first flirting, helping out at the drama club. He had pulled a chair out from under Aaron when she wasn't looking. She had been the vice president of the club back then. This woman was crazy, holding a grudge for years. That was the old Lucas who did that. What did it have to do with him now? A secret smile played on Lily's lips. I'm going to take a shower, she said. Caleb gave me a scare earlier. I broke out in a sweat. Silly goofball. Kids are tougher than you think. They could sleep on their heads and flatten them, and they'd still grow back. I was still scared. Lily walked into the bathroom. A moment later, the door cracked open and she peeked out, waving him over. H, honey, can you come here for a second? She whispered. Her skin was still smooth and fair, and a single droplet of water glistened on her beautiful collarbone. Lucas, who had just put the babies back in their crib, felt his eyes widen and his energy surge. A shower together? Was the bathtub he had prepared for so long finally going to see some action? Could it be true? In less than 2 seconds, Lucas had sprinted to the bathroom door and was met with a sharp headbutt. "I was terrified back there, and you were just laughing," Lily said, giving him a wounded look before shutting the door again. Lucas stared at the white ceiling, completely stunned. Was holding a grudge, a skill all girls were born with. Kids grow up fast, changing almost every day. They learned to roll over, and now they could crawl all over the big bed in the bedroom. Caleb was relatively well-behaved. Stella, on the other hand, if you took your eyes off her for a second, she'd be at the edge of the bed. It had scared Lily so badly that she barely let her out of the crib anymore. By early summer, the weather had turned warm. Lily's figure and stamina had returned to their pre-pregnancy state, and if anything, she had a more mature, alluring charm. Early one morning, Lucas was in the living room, bouncing the babies on his lap. He knew that kids didn't usually start saying "mama" and "dada" with intent until they were about a year old, but he couldn't wait. He taught them whenever he had the chance. "Dada, say dada." Lily, who was drawing, looked up and muttered, "Isn't it too early for that?" "What do you know? Fortune favors the prepared. When they start calling me dada, don't you get jealous," Lucas said dismissively, turning back to his patient instruction. It was like studying for the GRE. Everyone tells you not to start too early, but if you actually listen to them, you're the real sucker. You never knew how many people were getting a head start while telling everyone else to take it easy. They were all competitors. Every person you could trick was a win. "I won't be jealous," Lily mumbled, though she didn't sound very convincing. Okay, if she was being honest, she was already a little jealous. Maybe she should give it a try too. A few minutes later, as Lucas was playing with the kids, Lily shyly sidled up to them, squeezed the baby's tiny hands, and whispered, "Say mama." Lucas snorted internally. "How's the job search going?" he asked suddenly. His goofball had officially graduated now. She wasn't planning on grad school, so she had to think about her future. Even though he owned Polaris, he had no intention of pushing Lily to be a stay-at-home mom. His only standard had always been her happiness. Drawing illustrations was her passion, and probably her ambition. Everyone wants to leave their mark in the field they love most. Just as he'd thought, although Lily's world revolved around him and the twins, she had no desire to be a housewife. To have a high and stable income, she needed to negotiate a long-term contract with a game company, preferably one that allowed her to work remotely, submitting her work on a deadline. The pay was a little less, but the freedom was worth it. "It's going well. I told them I'm only taking remote contract work, and a few companies are still willing to talk. I suggest you take another couple of months off. You just had the babies, after all." "I have to work hard to earn money," the girl said, her face serious. "I have you and 2 children to support now." She finished with a smile, gently pinching the baby's cheeks. Lucas couldn't argue with that. "You could just do the character art for my company," he suddenly remembered. Lily's fundamentals were still a little weaker than Aaron's, who had been practicing since childhood, but based on skill alone, she could easily be on par with Chloe at Polaris. In other words, she'd be second only to the lead artist. If the HR department hadn't known that Lillipad was actually the boss's wife, they probably would have tried to recruit her themselves. "That would feel like I'm just earning our own money back," Lily said, looking down and fiddling with her fingers. "I can draw for you, but getting a paycheck from Polaris, it feels weird." Lucas fell silent. He wanted to tell her that drawing for Polaris was actually helping her husband make money, but he had to admit it did feel a little weird. Fine, she could go earn someone else's money. A moment later, Lily glanced at her phone. "A company wants to meet for an interview. I'll have Mom come over to watch the kids," Lucas said, handing the rattle back to Caleb. "I'm going with you. The people who handle these contracts love to rip off artists. They're all in the same industry. They'll probably recognize you, right? You're the owner of Polaris Interactive, after all," Lily said, suddenly realizing her husband was kind of famous. "Don't be ridiculous," Lucas said, putting on a pair of sunglasses and pushing them up his nose with a single finger. A ridiculously smug grin spread across his face. "I'm just a nameless, ordinary assistant.